This handsome guy who looks like a CEO is our protagonist, Deculian von Greyhan-Yukline. If you had to describe him, you'd use words like super handsome, cold, ridiculously cool, rich, domineering, someone who scorns both nobility and commoners. Praised as a magic prodigy in his youth and now holding the title of senior professor at the Magic Academy. Ordinary people would think he has a brilliantly bright future. But no. What awaits him in the future is only the road to death. Because he is the antagonist at school, an infamous villain and one of the mid-bosses in a game. To save himself, Deculian must change the storyline. If you want to know the details of the story, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel, then come back to watch more. The story begins with a torrential downpour. At that moment, Deculian was leaning against a wall while a white-haired girl plunged her sword deep into his chest. Her eyes were vacant, like a cold-blooded assassin without a hint of feeling. She gently twisted the sword in her hand, widening the wound. This made Deculian unable to help but cough up a mouthful of blood. Yet, Deculian seemed not to feel any pain at all. He stared at her and thought, if she wants to kill me, she remains so beautiful and heartless. As he thought that, he raised his hand and gently touched that emotionless face. Then his hand fell limply downward. The last thing he said in his heart was, "Damn you." At the same moment, a notification suddenly appeared on the screen, engagement cancelled. Request, Deculian's death. Congratulations, you have completed the stage. Looking at Deculian's death on the computer screen, a young man clenched his hands in excitement, finally fixed the bug. This damn bug took dozens of iterations to fix. I finally managed to fix the bug that kept occurring in the engagement cancellation sequence. My name is Kim Woo-jin. I'm a game programmer, and I'm about to escape this endless overtime grind. Woo-jin said as he stretched, exhausted. To explain this, I have to mention a handheld game developer called REW. In the trash heap of Korea's handheld game industry, they suddenly rose up. Since their founding, they've only released top-tier games. Because of that, the company became famous worldwide, and the game I'm testing and fixing is REW's latest AAA title, a game worth as much as the whole company. In other words, this game will either take us to the top or push us into the abyss. The main draw of this game is its difficulty and a storyline that changes according to the player's decisions. Thus, even as a single-player game, it has an extremely complex plot revolving around named characters created by artificial intelligence. This novel approach attracted the world's attention. Moreover, there are many professions to choose from. Some are rare, for example, knight, mage, adventurer, demon, demon hunter, noble and even royalty. Players can become anyone they want in the game. That means if the game gains the recognition it deserves, we'll be swimming in money. But big rewards come with risks. If the company fails, it will be ruined. While we're here, let me explain why I've been working overtime for months. It's all because of this bastard, Deculian von Greyhan-Yukline. Profession, Senior Professor. Energy level, 3357. He's the focal character in Deculian's death sequence, the sequence I finally passed without errors. Deculian von Greyhan-Yukline, an infamous villain and one of the game's mid-bosses. Because he's a major antagonist tied to countless roles, there's a whole pile of bugs that need fixing. But today, I finally managed to kill him without any trouble. This time his death was at the hands of his fiancée, who slashed him to death. But now it's over. Even so, he caused a mountain of trouble throughout the sequence. Woo-jin thought as he laced his fingers together and stretched to loosen his muscles. Then, at the same time, a girl's voice suddenly sounded behind him. Woo-jin, how's the testing going? Hearing someone call him, Woo-jin turned his eyes back and quickly recognized who the young woman was. This is Yura, my lead programmer and also my ex-girlfriend. We were together for 7 years, and every moment was filled with joy. In truth, she's a workaholic, while I'm lazy. But what pushed her forward was finding work for me and forcing me to do better, to do more. But in the end, we broke up. I couldn't change, no matter how hard RA tried. It's been 6 months since we split. I heard there's someone new by her side now. Unaware of these thoughts in Woo-jin's heart, RA spoke up, congratulations, I heard you had trouble with a bug, glad you got past it. In response, Woo-jin exhaled and said with a hint of sarcasm, so you and your new acquaintance are doing well, huh? Woojin's remark startled Ra slightly, but then, she lightly admitted, in this company rumors spread fast. Yeah, I think it's going well. For Woojin, his eyes remained glued to the computer screen, but inside he felt a bit uncomfortable hearing Ra say that. Then, wishing the two of them a long and happy marriage, Woojin spoke once more, and, as if used to the protagonist's personality, Ra gave an awkward smile and said, "Don't be petty, focus on work." After saying that, she remembered something and reminded Woojin, "Oh, by the way, the scriptwriters said they want to change the setting and have us alter some character templates." Hearing this, Woojin truly wanted to smack the scriptwriter a few times. Huh? Again? They change it every day. The male lead complained once before he changed the subject to Deadliest. Speaking of that character, he's really a mid-boss. Players can kill him early if they're lucky. In reply, Ra had to nod in agreement, that's the game's draw. The deeper Deadliest goes into the story, the stronger he becomes. Each player makes different choices, which increases the difficulty along the way. Did you know? This character was designed based on you. When shaping him, didn't you notice? Both of you have that overly cheesy, fake look. Ra said with delighted laughter, while Woojin turned back to complain, but how many times have I actually met the scriptwriter? So each time you play, you kill him first. Ra smiled softly. This revelation made Woojin glance and ask coldly, "What do you mean by that?" "Well, you two have the same personality." Ra shrugged, while Woojin widened his eyes in thought. Really? I'm like that guy whose last line is, "Damn you." Putting jokes aside, Ra's voice grew serious as she asked Woojin's opinion, "Stop worrying so much. What do you think about the demo level?" In response, Woojin frankly shared his thoughts. "The game itself is fun, but I'm worried, the company's survival depends on it." Behind him, Ra heard that and shook her head slightly. "You don't need to worry about things like that. The gameplay trailer has excited people all over the world. It definitely won't fail." Returning to Woojin's viewpoint, he then looked down and noticed something. He spoke up to point it out, "Hey, is that your boyfriend standing down there? See? The person leaning against the car over there." Hearing this, Ra also turned her eyes to look out the window, where a blonde guy was standing. Then she scolded him a little, "You're so late." Before she could finish, our protagonist urged, "What are you still standing here for? Don't make him wait, go to him." Hearing that, Ra was silent for 2 seconds before replying, "You're right, then I'll go. Good job today, Woojin." Bye. Woojin responded, but he didn't even bother to turn around. After his ex left the office, Woojin returned to his work. Sigh, back to checking Deadliest. But is that scriptwriter serious? Is he based on me? He has 6 attributes. He's supposed to be both a prodigy and a mediocre mage. As a child, Deadliest was praised as a genius and hailed as a magical prodigy. But in reality, he's much more mediocre than at first. So the mix of his pride and arrogance created the worst possible personality in a person. Honestly, at this point, can we still call him a person? They say the deeper you go into the story the stronger he becomes, but ultimately he's surrounded by people who despise him, no exceptions. What else can I add to his personality? Subtle things. After all, I'm his inspiration. As he spoke, Woojin typed and clicked like a machine, and very quickly, a trait called empathy appeared on the computer screen. Let's see. This trait is empathy. Will this give him sympathy or pity? Okay, leave it. At least people should feel more sympathetic toward him than me. Since I'm already doing it, might as well go all out. This one's good. I like this. And this one too. Add this one as well. Thus, Woojin began adding a total of 5 new traits to Deadliest, including empathy, wealthy magnate, golden touch, keen perception, sturdy physique. At a glance, these are clearly excellent traits. After finishing, even Woojin felt a bit embarrassed for adding so many good traits to a character modeled on himself. Oh no, I accidentally added too many good ones. In hindsight, I shouldn't have done that, so I should restore him to his original state before anything happens. Return you to normal state. Wu Jin muttered and quickly typed on the keyboard. But at that moment a message suddenly arrived, startling him. Damn! What the hell? Who sends a message at this hour? He glanced at the message and became even more shocked. Wait. It's the scriptwriter. Wu Jin hurriedly texted back, oh yes, what do you want to change in the template? Tell me and I'll fix it right away. The scriptwriter replied, no, I'm just here to watch. This message puzzled Wu Jin, unsure what the other person meant, so he texted, wait, what do you mean? You mean you're here to check bugs with us? To Wu Jin's question, the scriptwriter sent an even stranger message. Haha, no. Look out the window. Seeing that, Wu Jin curiously looked out the window and wondered, the window? What's there to see? That was what Wu Jin thought. However, the moment he looked out, his face froze. Above, black clouds churned and lightning flashed within them. Most strikingly, at the center of the clouds was a large hollow, like a deep hole. This made Wu Jin's eyes widen as he wondered, what is that? Why is there a hole in the sky? Then, from inside that hole, a massive bolt of lightning shot down, as if trying to split the earth in two. Wu Jin's vision shifted. Countless chaotic images flashed through his mind, making him wonder, what is happening? Hey! Where is this? Who is this? A voice then rang out, remember this, always be vigilant. Deculion is not someone to be taken lightly. He may be down, but he can rise again at any moment. He's simply rebalancing the scale of his talent. After all, he's a despicable villain. Cut to an extremely lavish room, where a loud call echoed, wake up. Get up. Wake up now, Deculion. The irritated shout made the young man lying in bed bolt upright. The speaker was a black-haired girl, staring at the youth with a face that looked like she wanted to devour him. How long do you plan to lie there? Can you even call yourself human? Not answering the reproach, the young man rubbed his face and sighed heavily. Ah, so that's it. It's been a few days since I possessed this body, but it still feels like a dream. Wu Jin whispered in a voice only he could hear. Meanwhile, seeing Wu Jin ignore her, the black-haired girl's lips clenched. Then she shouted, how long will you lose yourself over a woman? Are you trying to disgrace our family name? I've left the files here. If you don't want to be fired from the professor position you love, get up and work. With that, she stormed out of the room in anger. On his side, Wu Jin was still piecing everything together. A week ago, the night sky suddenly flashed, and I woke up in an unfamiliar place. Inside a strange body. I can say I'm in the world of the game I'm programming. The familiar scenery only strengthened my suspicion. Additionally, I'm in the body of someone who cannot escape death, regardless of how this world's plot unfolds. The worst character of all. I've become the villain, Deculion. Pausing the story briefly, I want to unify how I refer to the protagonist. His real name is Kim Wu Jin, and the in-game name of the character he inhabits is Deculion, so I'll use Deculion. Returning to the story, Deculion carefully gathered the documents the black-haired girl had thrown to the floor and arranged them neatly. Meanwhile, he lay dazed on the bed, rubbing his face and thinking everything over. A week has passed since I arrived here. At first, I thought it was all a dream, but as days passed, the sensation of being a living entity forced me to accept that this is reality. Having died like that, could I be experiencing some kind of afterlife? But in any case, what I'm certain of is, I'm the antagonist of the game in development, Deculion von Greyhan Yuckline. Deculion is the mid-boss in the game, whom players will face regardless of which route they choose. He is the enemy of many characters' parents and lovers and the source of numerous events. I've become such a villain. The biggest problem is, I don't know which stage of the game I have appeared in. The only thing I know is the total mana I have, but I don't know how to use it. I can't defend myself in this state. I'm not joking. Among all the characters, including Deculion, I tested playthroughs over 1,000 times during development, and Deculion survived in only one scenario. He truly is a villain created solely to fulfill his role as a mid-boss. Thinking that over, Deculion glanced at the stack of documents beside him. These were the papers the girl had left behind. They contained basic knowledge of magic and mana-related theory. Next, information about the black-haired girl quickly appeared in Deculion's mind. Her name was Uriel von Dellen Yuckline. The papers she left while I was asleep belonged to Dekillian's half-sister, and she effectively served as the true lord of the Yuckline family in Dekillian's stead. Also, she didn't have a good relationship with Dekillian. The woman Uriel mentioned is probably Yulia. It seems there's something going on between Dekillian and Yulia. If I recall, she mentioned a professor position. There's even a lecture today. I should go. Since I never taught in my previous life, I need to gather any information I can. And most importantly, these lines keep appearing. At that moment, a system screen appeared before Dekillian. Main objective: survive by becoming a necessary character for the game. Side quest: teach at the academy. Reward: shop money plus 0.5. Whether he wanted to or not, Dekillian had to haul his tired body out of bed. As he moved, he reassured himself. Whether it's for it or for Yulia, I have to act. She was one of the factors that caused Dekillian's death. And the shop money is fairly important too. So how should I lecture? Of course I'm worried, but it'll be fine. After all, this body has a special skill, understanding. Understanding, an innate skill that grants the user the ability to comprehend everything. Can be activated by consuming mana. Before Dekillian existed, I added this skill to him hoping he might become more empathetic. This is an innate special skill that appears in the latter half of the game, so it surely has some hidden uses. Lavish bath and wardrobe, but I can use them more naturally than I expected. It's as if I've always lived as Dekillian. At first I thought these clothes were too ostentatious. Now, they feel strangely elegant and comfortable. This must be the influence of Dekillian's dignity trait. Everything seems to be telling me that this is your body. Honestly, I can't act against the manners this body expects. Things that Kim Woo-jin once found uncomfortable now feel completely natural. Even if it's just to gather information, attending my first lecture seems perfectly normal. I am an outstanding and worthy noble. Thinking that made Dekillian break out in a cold sweat. He reminded himself, what the hell, Kim Woo-jin? A healthy Korean youth, rather educated and handsome. Borrowing someone's final words before parting, a lazy, boring bastard. That's who I really am. Yes. I won't forget myself. No slacking. Scene change. Dekillian silently reminded himself once more, then strode out. Outside, a driver and a very luxurious car had been waiting for him. When the driver saw Dekillian, he bowed at a 90-degree angle in greeting. Seeing that, Dekillian coldly and briskly climbed into the car. In his head he couldn't help but exclaim, "God damn, this expensive car. I don't think I ever rode in such an expensive car in my previous life, damn." It reminded me of that time again. So frustrating. Dekillian gritted his teeth, thinking of the image of Are's new boyfriend waiting for her at the company below. Then, when Dekillian glanced to the side, he noticed a brown-haired youth whose hair shadowed his eyes. Curious, Dekillian wondered inwardly, who is this kid? Beside him, the youth, startled to see Dekillian looking his way, quickly greeted him. "Good morning, Professor," he said, handing a stack of papers to the protagonist. This made Dekillian quickly use his mind to deduce the boy's identity. It seemed he was Dekillian's secretary or assistant, probably. Thinking that, Dekillian took the papers and asked, "Are you a mage?" Dekillian's unexpected question made the brown-haired boy exclaim in surprise, "What? Huh? You've been teaching me for nearly 3 years." No, I'm just kidding," Dekillian shook his head. After that, while heading to the academy, the protagonist checked the stack of documents. These materials. I thought they were lecture notes, but they turned out to be a script I only needed to read. The lecture content had been prepared from start to finish. I mean, there's no way this incompetent, arrogant Dekillian would prepare a lecture himself. This kid must have done it for him. Thinking that, Dekillian felt a bit flustered and said, "Well done." However, the moment Dekillian said that, the student startled and cried, "What?" Dekillian didn't speak much and only instructed, "Rest until we arrive." "Yes, I understand," the student replied hurriedly, while the driver inwardly wondered in surprise, he praised someone just now. Back to Dekillian, his face wrinkled and he broke out in a cold sweat. What kind of absurd personality is this? My stomach twists just from one compliment. So this is Dekillian's nature. I had sensed it before leaving the mansion, but it feels like my mind is being influenced by Dekillian's personality, the protagonist murmured, and not long after, the sleek black car stopped, accompanied by the driver's reminder, "We've arrived, master." From the back, Deculion said little and quickly opened the door to step out. Before him stood an expansive architectural complex with towering buildings. Within the campus, countless students walked about, a sight that left Deculion overwhelmed. So this is Deculion's workplace, the Royal Academy. The lecture hall to go to is Rotio Auditorium. Time passed quickly. Cut to Rotio Auditorium. Inside, the hall was packed with students. They chatted excitedly. "Finally I can attend Senior Professor Deculion's lecture." Hearing that, another asked, "Is he the genius who analyzes incantations?" In response, someone more informed added, "Not only that. I heard he's a prodigy." Before the students could discuss further, a voice rang out. A figure appeared in the room and called for attention, "All eyes on me." Immediately, the students fell silent. "I am Deculion von Greyhan Yuckline. I have been assigned this lecture as a senior professor of the Mage Tower." With the cold, aristocratic demeanor, Deculion calmly said, "Then, let us begin." His handsome bearing began to make the female students in the class swoon. "Wow! He's so handsome. And smart too. So cool." In another corner of the auditorium, a girl hearing those words gripped the paper on her desk. Her hand trembled with excitement. "Cool, huh? We finally meet," her eyes filled with hatred. "That filthy scoundrel Deculion, my father's enemy," she said, staring at the protagonist with a piercing gaze. Returning to the strange girl's thoughts, memories of the past surfaced in her mind. 3 years ago, my father committed suicide. After years devoted to researching exegetically scriptures, he took his own life from the shock of having his thesis stolen. The person who took my father's thesis was celebrated by the public as a genius of scripture interpretation. Yes, I'm talking about that bastard Deculion. But there was nothing I could do. After my father died, I lost everything. Once a noble, I lost not only my family but also our lands and all the assets we owned. In the end, I had nowhere to go. It was then that I swore to myself, I will take revenge on that scum. After that day, I worked tirelessly day and night until I was finally admitted to the Royal Academy, where Deculion teaches. I know something the other students don't, his skill at interpreting the scriptures is just a facade. All the glory was stolen from my father. After destroying my family, how can he be so calm about it? The one who should be standing in that position is my father. I want to expose his lies and kill him immediately. But now, if I want to overthrow him, I need to prepare much more for a perfect revenge plan. The young woman thought this, her whole body trembling with rage. Still, she tried to calm herself, unaware that while she was overwhelmed by those emotions, our protagonist was calmly introducing himself to the students in the class. "Attention, everyone. I will begin the lecture. Allow me to introduce myself. I am a senior professor at the Mage Tower, a Grand Mage class wizard, the one who can command the elements. I have been assigned as your special instructor." Wizards are divided into 11 ranks, with Grand Mage being 4th from the top. By now, you must already know this. But magic is mainly divided into 3 attributes and 9 schools. The attributes include, origin, the foundation of magic, element, the makeup of matter, and material, the medium that conducts mana. As for classification, there are, summoning, spirit forms, destruction, support, control, durability, enchantment, harmony, and finally specialization. That's why a wizard must, blah blah. Returning to Deculion's perspective. While lecturing the students, he thought inwardly, things are going more smoothly than I expected. Not only is this my first lecture, I'm also teaching magical theory, a subject I'm unfamiliar with. Even though I'm only reading from a prepared script, it seems I grasp the entire content thoroughly. The dignity and dominance traits draw every gaze to me, while the elegance trait keeps me from feeling awkward under that attention. Instead of feeling pressured, it becomes natural. Deculion's traits truly make him a fitting lecturer. With that thought, Deculion focused on his lecture. He explained, mana has different uses depending on the body part that stores it. Usually, wizards store mana in the brain, the place where spells are easiest to visualize. On the other hand, swordsmen store mana in the heart, the organ that pumps blood throughout the body. And finally, the dantian is the most suitable mana reservoir for everyone, as it has a strong connection between internal and external forces. What I'm saying is simple. Effort is important, but if talent isn't enough, careful choice and focus are also essential. Saying this, even Deculian reminded himself, that is indeed sound advice for Deculian. In reality, Deculian is not an overly talented figure. Although he currently has 3,375 mana points, there's still a character whose name starts with over 30,000 starting mana. The one who should heed this advice most is him. It's laughable. Anyway, this is just a pre-written lecture. With that in mind, he announced the end of the lesson. That concludes today's lecture. One last thing. As he said this, the protagonist's voice suddenly stopped. He hesitated inwardly. I'm hesitating over this line. Do I have to read it? If I were the real Deculian, I wouldn't read it. Deculian wants to be himself, not be influenced by the game's body's personality. So he asked the students, any questions? Hearing this, the students glanced at each other and shrugged. It seemed no one had any questions, which relieved Deculian a little. Good, it seems no one has questions. He murmured and prepared to end the lecture. However, at that moment, a gray-haired girl suddenly stood up and shouted, Professor Deculian. A strange spell was discovered in the mage dormitory last night. Some call it the work of a demon. As a genius of scripture interpretation, what do you think about this? In response, Deculian glanced at her and asked, are you really affiliated with the Mage Tower? Across from him, the gray-haired girl was a bit startled, not fully understanding Deculian's question. Excuse me, why are you asking that? Deculian explained, if you are truly from the Mage Tower, you should have introduced yourself first. I will not answer questions from an impolite child like you. Deculian's reply made the strange girl stare wide-eyed, but our protagonist seemed unconcerned and immediately turned toward the door he had entered. He even thought, sorry, but there was no other choice. I just realized how much mana the knowledge trait consumes. It cost 1,300 mana just to understand this lecture script. Who knows how much mana a spell I've never seen before would require. Inside the auditorium, those nearby who watched the girl scolded by Deculian whispered and laughed among themselves. Heh heh, she tried to get attention but failed. These mocking words seemed to anger her further. Then, as if not ready to give up, she continued, wait. The mages refused to explain it, saying it's just a false rumor, but I believe you, Professor, can identify the type of spell. I formally request an explanation of this spell. Having said that, she immediately used the mana in her body to create a crooked green magic circle that floated above the classroom. And with just one glance at it, Deculian's mana dropped, leaving him with only 360 points. Above, the gray-haired girl continued, some apprentice mages stayed in the dorm to analyze it but have made no progress. If you could give us a hint. Before she could finish, Deculian interrupted, this is a barrier magic. No need to give you a hint. This is barrier magic of the enchantment school. Someone tried to imprison you within it. That's all. Saying that, Deculian coldly left the room, leaving the gray-haired girl stunned. And for completing his teaching task, Deculian also received 0.5 shop points from the system. Time passed quickly, the scene shifted to the Mage Academy's dining hall. At this moment, the gray-haired girl was still irritated, recalling Deculian's earlier lecture. What an annoying man. I wanted to expose his fraudulent exegetically skill with that unknown spell, and instead he called me rude just because I forgot to give my name. I thought I would die of embarrassment, but he must have been surprised trying to wriggle out of the situation. He called it enchantment magic. Enchantment magic is very complex, so it usually requires an intermediary object. How could it be enchantment magic without an intermediary? What I showed him was an exact copy of the anonymous standard magic drawn on the main door of the dorm last night. Although people were initially quite confused, it became reference material for the newcomers. I know he's lying, she muttered. Then, from the back, a red-haired friend came running up, out of breath, calling, Ephrine. Ephrine, the magic formation from last night, we figured it out. When we restructured the incantation into a barrier, I was truly astonished. We were too scared of the professor to ask anything. But you're really brave. On hearing this, Ephrine looked dazed. Huh? Wait. You mean, It really was a barrier spell. To confirm, the red-haired girl nodded brightly. Yes. Professor Deculion is amazing, isn't he? How could he know it's enchantment magic without an intermediary? Thank you, Ephraim. We'll file a report about this. We'll definitely put your name on it. Thanks. Ephraim replied awkwardly. Even so, she still seemed unable to accept that Deculion had really identified the magic. No way. That's impossible. It must have been a lucky guess. In the end, I only boosted his reputation. Thinking that, she took a paper out of her bag. Knowledge of Elemental Magic, Advanced Class, 5 credits, Instructor, Deculion von Greyhan Yuckline. Looking at the paper, Ephraim pressed her lips together. She thought, a lecture by Deculion this term. They say that if you know your enemy and yourself, you will never lose. I'll have to steel myself if I have to face that bastard every day. Just wait, Deculion, I'll expose you soon. Ephraim told herself this, and a blazing anger began to rise within her. Back with Deculion, although he had left the classroom, he couldn't help feeling shaken inside. That was almost a disaster. The moment I looked at that magic, my understanding trait accidentally activated, and just looking at the interwoven lines of the magic circle was enough to drain all the mana from me. I still don't know what kind of magic it is. Even if I had twice my current mana, I couldn't comprehend its rules. But at least nothing bad happened. As Deculion was thinking this, a voice called out ahead, "Long time no see." The voice caught Deculion's attention, and he quickly recognized who it was. The person had white hair and bright eyes, a face he'd seen many times on his computer screen. Julia von der Frieden. She is Deculion's fiancée and a renowned figure destined to reach the peak of the knight profession. He hadn't expected to meet her here. Up ahead, Julia greeted him. "How have you been lately?" Deculion replied with an icy expression, "I'm not sure. Let's say I'm fine." For some reason, Deculion's answer seemed to anger Julia. Her brows tightened as she demanded, "You say you're fine, even though you broke the promise we made just a week ago." Back to Deculion's perspective, he had no idea what promise she meant. What promise? I don't know what you're talking about, it's best to dodge this. Thinking that, to avoid more trouble with someone as dangerous as her, Deculion coldly walked past. I don't remember. Now, before he could finish, the knight stepped in front of Deculion and said coldly, "Are you planning to run away?" Like before, Deculion sensed that Julia was determined not to let him go. So he had to stop and speak. "It seems I forgot because of my fever. Could you remind me what we promised each other?" At Deculion's question, images from last week began to form in Julia's mind. At that time she had said to Deculion, "Promise me. If you are honest with yourself and confess your pride and arrogance, I'll marry you, even if this world falls apart." Thinking that her trust had been betrayed, veins stood out on Julia's face. She gritted her teeth and said to the man before her, "It seems I was wrong to trust you. You may go on." Hearing that, Deculion glanced back at his fiancée for a moment, then immediately walked away. "Then I'll be going." Meanwhile, behind him, Julia's teeth were grinding so hard they made a sound. She recalled her betrothal to Deculion. "My engagement to Deculion is for the sake of advantage. Deculion is a talented mage, and I am a talented knight. The union of the two would certainly be beneficial for politics and lineage," her brother had said. Because both the Yuckline and Frieden houses have royal blood, no one opposed this marriage. Even Julia accepted it at the time. "It's fine, for the family's sake. Even if I don't love him, I'll accept it." That was what Julia thought then. However, the two houses soon discovered a truth: Deculion's talent never actually existed. Perhaps he didn't want to admit it, but he had deceived everyone by claiming to be a genius at analyzing magic and became a professor. But what must happen eventually did. Over time, many began to doubt whether Deculion's talent truly existed. The prodigy of magic, the youngest senior professor in the history of the Tower of Magic, Deculion had shown no progress since the exam 3 years ago. After several incidents, he no longer boasted of his achievements. Yet, despite discovering this, the Yuckline and Frieden houses still tried to hide the truth. Probably because they didn't want to become the subject of gossip. They didn't want their flaws exposed. But I could not let it go. I can accept a loveless marriage, but I cannot forgive deceit. That is my creed as a knight. That's all. He had agreed to it, but now, he doesn't even remember that promise, Yulia whispered. Her hand began to clench until it trembled. The Royal Academy, the Tower of Magic. The Royal Academy is the best institution in the game, and the Department of Magic is the top faculty. You could liken it to the Medical School of Seoul National University, and the Tower of Magic as its affiliated hospital. Scanning the surroundings, even Dekillian nodded in admiration. It looks nice. A large campus and meticulously tended gardens. It reminded me of one of the universities in America. How many nights must the game design team have spent creating this atmosphere? I could have enjoyed it more if I were in a different body to experience this campus. At that moment, suddenly someone was sprinting toward the protagonist. Dekillian sensed it immediately. His face darkened, and he reflexively swung his elbow back, hitting the person who had rushed up and sending the papers he was carrying flying everywhere. And the one who had run up was none other than Dekillian's assistant. I'm sorry, I'm rushing to see the professor here. Dekillian recognized his identity too. This is that kid from before. I thought it was an ambush. He murmured inwardly, then asked, "Oh, are you Zoro?" "No, it's Alan," the assistant replied. The exchange made the atmosphere between them a bit awkward. A few seconds later, Dekillian hesitated and continued, "Must have been my mistake." "Ah, yes." Alan answered, a little puzzled as to who Zoro was. Next, the scene cut to Dekillian's office. He was reviewing the documents Alan had brought and asked, "So this is the reason you rushed to see me?" Alan nodded and explained, "Yes, Professor. This is the list of sponsors for this year's new mages." His words made Dekillian quickly understand the situation. The Tower of Magic is equivalent to a research institution in the real world, so money is essential for developing magic. Professors at the tower sponsor new mages they deem worthy. Then, while scanning the applicant's information, Dekillian suddenly noticed someone's entry glowing. This name is glowing. I think it's because of Dekillian's attributes. He possesses the wealthy magnate trait, rare, described as a born tycoon and exceptional financier with an unparalleled instinct for things of value. The more information provided, the more accurate your intuition becomes. The sharp vision trait, rare, describes the ability to perceive visually with acute insight. Mana points and similar elemental attributes are mainly used to link with other traits rather than alone. Back in Dekillian's perspective, he quickly inferred, with this phenomenon, it's surely the combination of wealthy magnate and sharp vision. I think the factor behind this name will bring in well. There were a few like that, but she was the brightest. At that moment, standing before Dekillian was the gray-haired girl, Ephorine. Oh, that's another familiar face. Ephorine Luna, that's a well-known name in the game. According to the developer who designed her, Dekillian had taken her father away. However, why does Ephorine Luna have no sponsors at all? Dekillian asked involuntarily. To this question, his assistant Alan scratched his head and explained awkwardly, "Ah. Ephorine Luna. I think people are afraid." Not letting him continue, Dekillian nodded. "I understand." After saying this, Dekillian thought to himself, it seems people worry about what she might do if they sponsor her. Let's see, she has enough talent to enter the Tower of Magic without the Academy. However, this Ephorine Luna is Dekillian's enemy. No, rather. Dekillian is her enemy. If I let things play out just like in the game, I'll meet the same end, death. A system notification appeared. Skill, Villain's Destiny, Description, everyone wishes for his death. However, what doesn't kill him will make him stronger. In the game, Dekillian dies in many ways. Stabbed in the heart, stabbed in the head, poisoned in wine, blown up to death. Whatever the method, the fact of his death does not change. If I want to live, I must choose differently. A choice the original Dekillian would not make. With that in mind, after about 2 seconds of thought, Dekillian began to sign the paper, then handed it back to his assistant Alan. "Alan, submit these. And borrow some books, I plan to write a few things before going home." "Ah, yes, Professor. Goodbye." His assistant Alan replied and hurried off to borrow the books. Once he saw him leave his office, Dekillian fell into thought again. I need a lot of money to survive. Money can prevent many deaths. Investing in a mage is one way to make money, however, that's still not enough. Countless names in this world hate me, they will kill me whenever they get the chance. To survive, what I really need, is an escape. I need to become stronger. However, Dekillian's talent is only average. In this situation, I can't properly deal with the threats to come. I can't survive the countless deaths still waiting ahead. Although I have one advantage, my attribute. Dekillian can't control all 4 elements as he boasted, but he certainly has potential in manipulating earth and fire, along with his talent for manipulating magic. And from combining earth and fire to form metal, Dekillian developed a special trait called the Midas Hand. The Midas Hand, unique rank, consumes the user's mana to unlock a target's potential. Thus, Dekillian's talent for controlling metal allows him to manipulate swords that float by energy. Thus, Dekillian's metal control talent lets him command energy-suspended swords. However, this is certainly uncommon in this world. What I lack in raw power can be compensated by manipulating the properties of metal. But to accomplish all that, first I must learn how to control things. I have to learn to manipulate objects. Let's test it. No sooner thought than done, Dekillian placed his hand on the basic manipulation magic guidebook before him. At the same time, he activated his understanding attribute to learn faster. At that moment, a fierce energy poured out from him and formed an extremely complex magic circle in the air. Next, a storm of information began pouring straight into Dekillian's head, causing sweat to run continuously down his face. The contents and incantations of the mental ritual flowed directly into his mind, but quickly the process ended. To test what he had just learned, Dekillian glanced at the pen beside him and tried to focus his mind. Sure enough, shortly after, he was able to make the pen float in midair. Our protagonist was quite pleased with this result. Now I've memorized the basic mental ritual and no longer need an incantation to cast it. Seeing something I only saw in the game realized like this. Even if it's only basic, if the result after first learning the skill is this good, once I learn advanced remote control magic, I'll reach nearly the power I want. But now what should I do next? Can I inscribe magic circuits across my entire body? In this world, the larger a magic circuit is, the more powerful it is. Then, if I understand my body well with the understanding attribute, not just the brain but the heart, I can enhance my object control ability by engraving magic circuits over my whole body. Of course, there is a chance my body could be overloaded or suffer side effects. But this body has an attribute called Iron Man, granting its owner top-tier physical capacity and innate bodily potential, allowing me to withstand those side effects. This can only happen to me in this world. My remaining mana is currently 800, which should be enough to try a bit. With that thought, Dekillian began to experiment directly on his body. The book in his hands erupted with a violent light, and then countless strange characters began flowing inside Dekillian's body. Immediately, Dekillian felt a terrifying pain surge through him, an incomparable agony, as if every bone in his body were shattering and each muscle being torn apart. However, Dekillian did not flinch. He would not utter even a groan, for that was the refined composure a noble must possess. Time passed quickly, and finally the process completed, leaving Dekillian with exactly 1 mana point. His whole body trembled from the pain. I feel utterly exhausted. I failed due to lack of mana. But I gained something. Now I have a magic circuit on my shoulder. At this rate, it will take about 2 weeks to inscribe them across my entire body. Time passed swiftly. 1 month after Dekillian's lecture, today was the first day of class. The scene shifts to the Tower of Mages, where the students had gathered and were intently reading the wooden notice board posted by Dekillian. I, Professor Dekillian, want to assess your abilities. Bring me any results you obtain from this area. This place is saturated with elements, suitable for your experiments. After reading it, the students were surprised, turning to each other and whispering, "This is different from what the upperclassmen told us. Are all his classes like this? Think about it, he just expects us to self-study using the guideboard. So we have to do something with the elements? Is that why we're here? Where is Professor Dekillian?" The group asked anxiously. Elsewhere, Ephraim frowned in annoyance and blamed Dekillian inwardly. What an irresponsible man, telling us to self-study on the first day. What kind of bastard is he? No sooner had she finished speaking than a blonde girl came up from behind and bumped into her. The girl hurried on without offering any apology. This irritated Ephraim and she was about to snap at her. However, the moment she saw the blonde girl's face, Ephraim fell silent as she recognized who it was. It was Sylvia von Josefine Ilade. Across from her, Sylvia tilted her head slightly toward Ephraim, but then turned away and walked off. This left Ephraim staring blankly, wondering, she doesn't recognize me. Time passed quickly. At that moment, Ephraim was building a small castle with her magic, like a child playing in the sand. Yet Sylvia's earlier dismissal still nagged at her. What happened? If I'm not mistaken, that girl is definitely a member of the Ilade family. 10 years ago, the Ilade family, fearing my father's and my potential, used their soldiers to surround our manor and threaten my family. So why doesn't she remember me? Before she could find an answer, her little castle suddenly began to collapse under a strong gust of wind. Huh? What's happening? It feels like mana is being drawn away somewhere. Ephraim frowned, looking around to investigate. Sure enough, Sylvia was using her magic to construct a huge castle. Ephraim's small castle was being sucked toward it by Sylvia's spell. This made Ephraim angry, and she demanded, "Hey! What are you doing? Do you realize you're taking everything I gathered? Hey! Are you even listening to me?" Ephraim shouted, but the other girl remained silent. This made the gray-haired girl so furious that she trembled. What the hell is wrong with that brat? Why isn't she responding to anything I'm saying? However, Ephraim was perceptive. A normal person, even a stranger, would at least react. But Sylvia showed no response to any words. Ephraim quickly concluded that Sylvia was doing it on purpose. With that thought, she smirked and said, "Hey, why are you pretending not to know me, Miss Sylvia?" In front, Sylvia's shoulder twitched slightly at the remark, and of course Ephraim saw it. Just from that, the gray-haired girl was certain Sylvia recognized her. She continued, "I thought so. There's no way you don't remember me. After threatening my family and forcing me to abandon magic, are you afraid I've come to steal all your attention?" Across from her, Sylvia coldly denied it. "I don't know you." Hearing that, Ephraim angrily shouted, "How dare you look down on me now?" In response, Sylvia turned and stared at Ephraim with a sharp gaze. "I don't know you. But I know your father, that arrogant noble. I heard he's dead." As soon as the words left her mouth, Ephraim clenched her teeth. Her eyes filled with extreme fury, like a bomb ready to detonate at any moment. And as expected, the surrounding students began sensing a massive magical fluctuation and turned to look. "Huh! Look!" a male student exclaimed. At that, everyone simultaneously turned their eyes and discovered. Ephraim had focused energy into her fist and lunged straight at Sylvia without thinking. She shouted, "What did you just say? Say that again." Ahead, Sylvia quickly used her magic to form a barrier to protect herself. Ephraim's attack struck the barrier directly, producing a deafening explosion in the air. The group of onlooking students were pushed back by its force. Only when the blast subsided did panicked voices begin to rise. "What just happened? Is anyone hurt?" someone asked anxiously. By their gazes, Ephraim was now gripping Sylvia by the hair and demanding, "I told you to repeat that. How dare you insult my father?" Before she finished, a student in the crowd sensed a strange magical vibration and shouted, "What is that? What light is that?" Hearing this, Ephraim paused. She looked behind and discovered that, somehow, a spatial rift had appeared, emitting red-black energy. The entire group of freshmen panicked and screamed. Even Ephraim, who had been so fierce moments before, broke into a cold sweat at the sight. "It's a rift. Yeah, it's where my mana and Sylvia's mana collided earlier. It's sucking everything around it in." On the side, a student who realized the urgency shouted, "Hey! It's about to explode. Run now." Hearing this, Ephraim felt her heart drop. No. If it explodes, metal shards will fly like stray bullets and everyone here will die. She thought. However, she had no way to stop the rift. A few seconds later, the black hole detonated, releasing an extremely powerful shockwave. The ground around it was ripped into fragments. Seeing this, Ephraim gritted her teeth and used magic to raise a protective shield for everyone. But then she suddenly felt an unusual silence. What's happening? Why is it so quiet? Has it stopped? Ephraim wondered as she looked ahead. What she saw was the cold, cool figure of Deculion standing there. All the fragments hurled outward by the explosion were suspended in midair, motionless. This made Ephraim startle and wonder, when did he get here? And why did the explosion debris stop midair like that? Unaware of these thoughts among the students, Deculion began to command all the fragments to converge. They swirled like a flowing stream, emitting brilliant colors that left the students in awe. The moment they saw Deculion use telekinesis, everyone around gasped in admiration. Because they were all trainees studying magic, they couldn't help but appreciate the beauty of the spell. It was an enchanting magic whose beauty no one could deny. Returning to Deculion, after he tossed the entire pile of fragments aside like rubbish, our protagonist grew cold and said to the assembled students, "Attention. Today's lesson ends here. Everyone except those who caused this incident, leave." Seeing Deculion's icy expression, Ephraim swallowed nervously. It's over. I'm done for, she thought. Time passed quickly, the scene shifted to the interrogation room. Because the disturbance caused by Ephraim and Sylvia nearly got the whole student body into serious trouble, the academy immediately launched an emergency investigation. And as the professor responsible for that class, Deculion was present. Outside the entrance, a portly man saw Deculion and greeted him cheerfully, "Professor Deculion. You arrived early. As expected, your seriousness sets an example for all mages." That man was Retlon, professor of spirit studies. The man behind him was Relan, professor of auxiliary arts. In response, a girl wearing a mage's hat tilted her head and said, "Welcome, Professor Retlon, Professor Relan. Sorry for summoning you without notice, and thank you for coming so quickly." This girl was Adeline Sigilian, president of the Royal Academy of the Magic Tower. Hearing this, the two professors nodded and took their seats. Then a woman entered the room and snapped acidly, "So, who is it? Who dared lay hands on the Olade family's young lady?" In answer, the portly old Professor Retlon chuckled, "From what I've heard, it's just a lowly brat, not even enrolled in the academy. Truly a person of dubious background. But I also heard Professor Deculion handled what could have become a major disturbance satisfactorily." "I've heard the same. Quite impressive." Professor Relan chimed in. From Deculion's perspective, with his ability he could read Retland's true intentions with a single glance. He was flattering on the surface, but all the professors here were skilled at swaying outcomes, so the result of the disciplinary hearing was essentially already decided. On one side was Sylvia, daughter of the powerful Ilade clan, while on the other was a fallen noble, in reality a commoner, Ephraim. It was obvious which side they'd take, so I must change the outcome of this disciplinary meeting. Earlier, I had seen a swelling crimson aura emanating from Ephraim. Only I could see it because of my sharp sight trait. It signaled the emergence of a villain's fate. If I can't change the outcome, my death will draw nearer. Returning to the interrogation, after waiting for everyone to assemble, a voice announced, "The disciplinary hearing between novice mages Ephraim and Sylvia will begin now." On this side, the portly Retlon, not waiting for anyone, boomed, "How dare you two brawl within the academy? If not for Professor Deculion, someone would have been hurt. Why did you two fight?" In response to his question, Ephraim could only lower her head and say bitterly, "I can't speak." "What?" Retlon frowned and asked curiously. Meanwhile, Ephraim glanced up at the professors seated above and pondered. "That bastard is watching from somewhere above, so I couldn't say anything. Sylvia looked down on my father and had been driving me mad in a cunning way, but I couldn't possibly say that in front of that enemy." Thinking this, Ephraim's tears kept falling. She felt as if the whole world was against her. Unaware of Ephraim's inner thoughts, Retlon saw her crying and not only showed no pity but shouted even louder. "What are you playing at? Inferiority complex or what? You should know the clear gap in status between you and Sylvia, and yet you dare to brazenly ignore that." Below, Ephraim only clenched her hands tightly upon hearing this and said nothing. Seeing this, Retlon turned to Sylvia and urged, "So, Sylvia, speak." In reply, Sylvia recounted the whole incident. "During class, I accidentally ruined her work, which led to the dispute." After hearing this, the professors grew angry and began to murmur among themselves. What? Then Sylvia didn't do it on purpose? And Ephraim used that as an excuse to cause a scene? How dare that lowly unknown brat? Can't she control her temper? Chairwoman, we should expel her. We cannot tolerate that attitude and violent behavior. Below, Ephraim's teeth began to grit at the continuous remarks from the professors directed at her. So cold. I have to endure these crude insults at a simple disciplinary hearing in the academy. All the criticism is aimed at me, and I can't give any explanation. No one will stand up to defend me anymore. Everything feels so cold. Deculian. It's all because of that name. The more she thought, the more hateful her gaze became. On the other side, Chairwoman Adeline, seeing that everyone had reached consensus, made an announcement. If that's the case, it seems everyone has decided. Professor Deculian was present at the scene. Let's hear his opinion before reaching any conclusion. Hearing this, Deculian spoke up. I, Deculian, ask you as a senior tower professor and a member of the disciplinary committee. Do you think you are not at fault in this matter, Sylvia von Josephine Ilade? Upon hearing this, both Ephraim and Sylvia were startled. Then Sylvia blankly asked back, pardon. Deculian's voice rang out again. Let me ask again. Do you truly believe you're not at fault in this incident? Hearing this, Ephraim genuinely didn't understand what was happening. Not only her, portly Retlon also stammered in confusion. What are you saying, Professor Deculian? Ignoring his words, the protagonist kept his icy gaze fixed on Sylvia and made it clear to everyone in the room, you surely could have prevented that incident, but you did not. Or perhaps the ability everyone has such high expectations for you was actually insufficient to do so. Deculian's resolute words left Sylvia stunned, but then she reacted very quickly. She immediately bowed her head and took responsibility. I'm sorry. To be honest, I didn't stop her because I wanted her to get into bigger trouble. Beside her, Ephraim widened her eyes and thought, what? Why did he not ask me but ask Sylvia? No matter how you look at it, this is my fault. She then cast a suspicious glance upward. Meanwhile, portly Retlon thought similarly and advised, but even so, Professor Deculian, the fault isn't with the defender. The attacker is to blame, isn't she? In response, Deculian turned to him with a cold look. If you consider the context, the fault lies with me, the one who taught the class. Professor Retlon, do you want me to take the blame? Of course not. I only thought that would be inappropriate. Retlon hesitantly replied. To Ephraim, Deculian's words made her even more astonished. He had even dismissed the professor who sided with Sylvia. Why did he have to go that far? Could it be to protect me? Ephraim wondered inwardly. Then, to break the tension, Chairwoman Adeline clapped her hands to draw everyone's attention. All right, they're children, friction is how they grow. These kids are just novice mages, so instead of arguing over who's to blame and belittling them, let's let this one slide. This time, no one will be disciplined. You both may go. The chairwoman's declaration made Ephraim's hands clench and tremble. Instead of feeling relieved at not being expelled, she felt anger. What? I was fully prepared to be expelled. The Deculian I know certainly wouldn't do this. But then why? Ephraim wondered. The scene cut to the professors. With the inquiry over, they drifted out of the room. Meanwhile, portly Professor Retlon took the chance to flatter the protagonist. Exactly as expected from Professor Deculian. You have a special way of analyzing things. It's all for the students. However, before he could finish his sentence, Ephraim below, unable to contain her curiosity, stood and said, Professor, I have a question. Countless thoughts ran through Ephraim's mind. If he remembers the Luna name. And if he knows my father. And if he knows that he suffered his whole life before ending his own life. After saying that, she bowed her head anxiously to ponder. But, supposing Deculian does remember, what if he withdraws his decision to protect himself? Even so, if he doesn't remember my father, wouldn't that be even more painful? The more she thought, the more anxious Ephraim became awaiting Deculian's reply. But Deculian did not disappoint her in his answer. You don't need to ask. Don't waste your talent on things from the past. Having said that, our protagonist immediately left, leaving the gray-haired girl standing dazed alone. I knew it. Deculion knows about me and my father. If not for that, he would have no reason to help me. Surely Deculion felt some responsibility and decided to assist. So, he helped me out of pity. Thank goodness. It turned out he had not forgotten. And if he still remembered me, I'm satisfied with that. At least for now, that's enough. As she thought this, tears streamed down her small face. Ephraim moved, wiping her tears away. Thanks to the shift in her feelings, Deculion also overcame the variable death and received 2 shop coins. Time passed quickly. The scene shifted to Sylvia. She was picked up by a blond man in a convertible. His name was Gilthian von Ludwig Illade, Sylvia's father, a telepathic mage and head of the Illade family. Having heard the whole story, he turned to comfort his daughter. Well, you don't need to worry about that child anymore. Ephraim Luna truly has talent, but she missed her chance. Behind them, Sylvia stared blankly at the surroundings, thinking back to a memory. 10 years ago, on the aptitude test day to enter the academy, it was the first time Ephraim and Sylvia met. After the test with the magic orb, the old mage was stunned by the light it emitted. Impossible. Both of you have the talent to become archmages. Around them, others who heard the result whispered to each other, "What? Those 2 kids from our territory? What's going on?" The reason everyone was so surprised was because of that archmage level, the pinnacle of the magical world, the immortal, eternal level. An existence at a degree even an emperor cannot reach. Those who attain that level are called archmages and are recorded in the continent's history. However, normally only 3 people can become archmages in an era. It doesn't matter what kind of mage they are or what they specialize in, that's an unchanging law of mages. At that time, aside from Demican, the first to reach the eternal level in this era, there were 2 spots remaining. However, one of those 2 positions was essentially reserved for Adeline, the chairwoman of the Magic Tower, the strongest candidate for Archmage. In other words, Sylvia, the heir of the Illade family, and Ephraim, the daughter of the Luna family, a branch house, must compete for the remaining slot. I could understand that without anyone explaining. That day, I learned the real reason the Illade family was oppressing the Luna family was because of me. It was to help me become an archmage instead of Ephraim. Becoming an archmage is my wish, and my destiny, Sylvia told herself. Yet when she thought of Ephraim's earlier words, "Are you afraid I'll surpass you?" Sylvia felt a bit annoyed but quickly reassured herself. No. I'm just overthinking. Ahead, Uncle Gilthian seemed to sense his daughter's worry and smiled. You don't need to worry about that child. You should be wary of Deculion. He's not a simple man. He may be struggling now, but he was called a prodigy in his youth. He could rise to the top. No one knows. Sylvia clearly absorbed her father's admonition. I know. Professor Deculion saw through my trap. At that moment, I had clearly caused Ephraim's mana to vanish. I set a trap so that when it touched Ephraim's mana it would detonate. The bigger the explosion, the more trouble she'd be in. But Deculion immediately saw through my plan, even though I had checked for signs of observational magic in the area. At that time, he forced me to compromise. Instead of saying it was my doing, I know everything. Do as I say. That was a threat. But I still had to accept it. I thought he was just someone with above-average talent, but unexpectedly, he's so deep. What kind of person is he, really? The more she thought, the more sweat broke out on the young girl's face. Her hands trembled uncontrollably from stress. Time passed quickly. A few days later, the scene shifted to Deculion's mansion. At that time, our protagonist wore an elegant outfit that highlighted his nobility. It seemed Deculion was preparing to attend a party. Outside the room, a man's voice reminded him, "It's Roy. Are you ready?" Deculion replied he'd be out shortly. After that, the driver drove Deculion to the party in his expensive car. Inside the car, the protagonist quietly thought about Ephraim. I was right to support Ephraim. Because of that I eliminated a variable death and received shop money. I didn't expect the new mage who questioned me to be Ephraim, but she has the highest hostility toward Deculion. Of course Sylvia may still resent me regardless, but I had no other choice if I wanted to save myself. With that thought, he paused briefly and steered the conversation to today's trip. social events, I want to avoid them. However, I can't miss the chance to earn more shop money. With that in mind, he glanced at the system screen beside him. Side quest, attend the New Year's Flower event. Reward, shop money plus 0.5. Seeing the quest, Dekillian reminded himself, I need at least 5 more shop coins to access the shop. So I must check if any notable figures are at this event. Soon after, the carriage stopped at a grand castle. When Dekillian stepped inside, 2 valets at the door bowed to greet him. Welcome, Professor Dekillian. Without paying it much mind, as he entered the great hall, Dekillian didn't forget his purpose and glanced around to see if anyone could help him earn shop coins. They all looked like high nobility, and I also recognized many famous people I knew, especially a helm, the one I personally designed. Coming here was definitely the right choice. Dekillian murmured inwardly. At the same time, an older man behind him quickly noticed Dekillian's arrival and hurried over to greet him. Look who's here. Isn't this Professor Dekillian? My daughter is in your class. Around them, other guests who heard this also turned and surged forward, like sharks spotting prey. Oh, Professor Dekillian. I've always wanted to meet you. Facing a crowd crowding toward him, Dekillian had to retract his earlier thought that coming here was the right choice. Before Dekillian could greet the nobles in front of him, a voice grabbed his attention. Ganesha. I read about your deeds in Continental magazine. Beside him, the older man was about to invite Dekillian to dinner, but Dekillian raised a hand to stop him and scanned the area as if searching for someone. I just heard someone say, Ganesha. Get to know her. She'll have an important turning point in the plot. This is the best thing I can do today. But, where is she? I heard her name somewhere nearby. I need to seize this chance to meet her. Thinking that, Dekillian looked around. At the same time, on the second floor, a girl dressed like a captain was also staring at him. She was Ganesha, the 5th strongest character at the story's start. Back to the protagonist's viewpoint. After a moment, he spotted Ganesha's figure. She must be nearby. There she is, the woman with a red ponytail, wearing a mock explorer's outfit. I need to hurry. Dekillian told himself and quickened his pace. However, it seemed fate wanted to block him one step. At that moment, some random blonde guy came to bother him, stopping him in his tracks. Professor Dekillian. The one approaching was the blonde Helm. His full name was Helm von Girion Rewind, a commander-level mage of the royal family. Helm slowly approached Dekillian and spoke nonchalantly, as if they were old friends. Ho ho, impressive. Senior Professor Dekillian remembers me, what an honor. It's been a while. How's your research going? Suddenly, but I've heard some rumors. Dekillian frowned and asked, what are you talking about? Helm replied with amusement, oh, nothing. It's just that your research hasn't progressed in 3 years, and some people doubt your abilities. If you need help, I'm willing to offer it. Back in Dekillian's perspective, as the creator of these characters, he immediately guessed why this blonde had approached him. So he's here to provoke me. This guy was Dekillian's rival at school. They were close once, but after losing the senior professor post to Dekillian, he became envious. Dekillian would have been bothered at first, but such provocation meant nothing to him. In fact, Helm wasn't entirely wrong, the rumor had truth to it. Thinking that, Dekillian glanced up to the second floor and realized Ganesha's figure had vanished. She's gone. Ganesha's disappeared. I lost track of her because I stood here listening to that idiot. Behind him, unaware that Dekillian was furious, Helm kept talking like a machine. If you stay so arrogant, no one will like you. Back to Dekillian, by now he could no longer restrain his anger. He slowly moved closer to Helm and warned coldly, hey, Helm, enough of your nonsense, get lost, bastard. With that, Dekillian left, ignoring the stunned Helm behind him. Damn it. I have to find Ganesha before she leaves the party and get to know her. Otherwise, my plan will collapse. Dekillian muttered inwardly. Time passed quickly. At this point, the protagonist still hadn't found the strong woman. Instead, he had to spend time shaking off the crowd that wanted to talk to him. Phew. Even though I lost a helm's tail, there are still many idiots blocking the way. That's why I hate these parties. Decillion sighed in annoyance. But then, suddenly a voice called from beside him, Professor Decillion. Hearing the familiar sound, Decillion looked toward the caller. And to his surprise, the one calling was Ganesha herself. In front of him, Ganesha looked at Decillion with a teasing glint and said, "Did we just run into each other by chance, or were you looking for me?" Decillion didn't answer immediately, still taken aback by Ganesha's attitude. Of all times to run into her while hiding from those lunatics. More importantly, are Ganesha and Decillion acquainted? Thinking that, he gave a wry smile and replied, "I'm just lost." That answer made the redhead burst out laughing. "How funny. I knew you were looking for me. You have something to tell me." "I'm sorry about that mission, but I returned the mission fee and supplies. Can you let it go this once?" From that remark, Decillion immediately deduced, it seems Decillion and Ganesha are connected through some mission. Unaware of these thoughts in the protagonist's mind, the adventurer continued, "I'm sorry I didn't bring the magically gifted children you mentioned." "No, it's not that I didn't bring them. I grew attached to them, so I couldn't give them to you," she said with a complicated expression. Meanwhile, our protagonist still didn't understand the full story. "I don't know what she's talking about. But it seems Decillion has done this many times, trying to make up for his shortcomings with talented children." Turning back to Ganesha, her tone shifted slightly and she asked, "Let me ask you something. How long do you intend to live like this?" Her voice was full of sarcasm, and the question made Decillion thoughtful, bringing back many memories. "Until when?" Before I entered Decillion's body, he had listened to the temptations of useless people, destroyed the trust around him, and hurt many people for his own benefit. However, I'm different. Saying that, Decillion rested his hands on the balcony, looked into the distance, and said calmly, "From now on I'll live differently." To Ganesha, her earlier remark was pure sarcasm at Decillion. Yet she received a completely unexpected reply, leaving her staring at the protagonist in astonishment. "I didn't expect that. I thought you'd kill me for opposing that secret mission and running off. You're worrying too much." The male lead waved his hand, secretly admiring Decillion's foolishness. He actually seriously tried to kill Ganesha. The top fighter right now. He must have wanted to die. I knew nothing about Decillion at first, but Ganesha could kill anyone with a single hair. Her attributes were an immortal body and mastery of martial arts. She was a warrior who had reached the pinnacle of combat. Because I'm him now, Decillion couldn't send an assassin to kill Ganesha. If he had, he'd probably be in a coffin by now. It's a bit different from what I expected, but I still achieved my goal at this networking party. There's no reason to stay here. Thinking that, Decillion no longer wanted to linger at social events like this, so he told Ganesha, "I'll come back, so don't worry." Ganesha, curious as he started to leave, asked, "Are you really leaving like that? Is that okay? No assassins or killings involved?" "I'm not free." Decillion replied coldly. That remark left the redhead momentarily stunned. Back to Decillion, as he walked, he was mulling over a few things. With the Yuckline family's influence, as Ganesha said, I could use the Adventurers Guild to put pressure on her. However, doing so would increase the variables surrounding my death. Just as Decillion thought this, almost as if rewarded for the right decision, the system issued a reminder, "Villain fate, avoided cause of death. Store money +1. The notification left Decillion's face blank. What? Before it was overcome, and now it's avoid? I didn't realize it, but was that conversation one of the causes of death? I can't be careless here. The more he thought about it, the more anxious Decillion became, and he wanted to leave the party immediately. A slip of the tongue leading to a painful end. Cut to another corner of the party, where a brown-haired girl complained to her friend, "Hey, how much longer are you going to sit here?" Her name was Rayli. She was a relative of Yulia, an adventurer. In front of her, Yulia grumbled, "I never wanted to come here in the first place." "Oh come on, that's enough. Let's go," Rayli urged. Yet Yulia remained stubbornly seated. Seeing that, her friend seemed to pick up on something and suddenly asked, "So what's going on with that guy?" "Professor Decillion, I'm a bit worried. there are too many rumors. From Yulia's perspective, of course there were no pleasant memories with the protagonist. So she replied bluntly, of course. What's good about him? Her frank words made Rayli uneasy. She glanced around and warned, hey, if you say that out loud. At the same moment, footsteps sounded nearby, catching Yulia's attention. She lifted her gaze slightly and spotted Deculion slowly descending from the stairs below. Deculion met her eyes as well, but then, not wanting to entangle himself with one of the causes of his death, Deculion turned and left immediately. His reaction surprised the surrounding guests, who murmured, what? Professor Deculion is leaving? The guy who loves parties. Wow, he's leaving without even glancing at his fiancée once. Maybe he doesn't like her that much. If so, were the earlier rumors true? Because Deculion left the party earlier than usual, rumors spread that he had a falling out with Yulia. But there's no way Kim Woo-jin would write that. In short, after Deculion left the party, he completed his New Year's flower task and received an additional 0.5 store coins. Time passed quickly. It had been a week since I attended the New Year flower party. During that time, besides daily memory training and introductory kinetic mantra practice, I felt my physical strength was lacking. So I began physical training. The main reason was that I nearly died after doing something reckless. Rewinding to a few days earlier, as usual, Deculion inscribed a standard spell onto his body. However, the strain it placed on his body was greater than he expected, nearly killing our protagonist. If he were an ordinary mage, he might have died. Is my endurance due to the Iron Man attribute? After meeting Ganesha the other day, I craved greater power and inscribed the kinetic fire control mantra alongside the object control mantra to enhance metal manipulating techniques. The purpose was to upgrade by implanting a magic core into the kinetic mantra. This method shortens the time needed to learn spells but is extremely dangerous. After realizing the tremendous pressure it put on my body, I decided to train my physique. As a result, I established a morning routine. With that thought, Deculion finished his training. Whether it was due to the Iron Man trait or not, after only a short period of training his muscles had become highly defined, indistinguishable from those of longtime athletes. Phew, time to head to work. Deculion exhaled softly. Time passed quickly. Cut to Deculion's office, where his assistant Alan arrived and handed him a document satchel, explaining, "This is a declaration recently sent from the Mage Tower. The sender is the Tower's Professor Qualification Review Committee." Upon hearing this, Deculion's expression changed, and he quickly inspected the letter. The letter read, "We hereby notify you of a hearing scheduled within the next 6 months regarding developments in the research you are conducting, Professor Deculion. Please prepare all relevant materials until then." For Deculion, such an unexpected inquiry was difficult to handle. If an audit hearing is held, it would mean Deculion's research had been stalled long ago, even before I entered this body. This is an unfavorable situation for me. In the game, Deculion was always a genuine professor. Perhaps the prerequisite of this task is to retain the title of professor. If I lose it, all hope of returning will vanish. Therefore, I must find something, anything, in Deculion's laboratory to save myself. Deculion stood before the lab door. However, after opening the door and stepping inside, the scene before him left him speechless. It was utterly messy. Books, papers, and furniture were strewn everywhere, a chaotic jumble. And it looked like no one had set foot here for a long time. If Deculion had truly been using this lab, it would never have been this disorder. Thinking that, Deculion glanced at a pile of debris not far away. He sensed something from it. That pile looked very unusual. Was it hiding something? I don't know who to blame, but this was surely the most effective way to hinder Deculion. Luckily I had learned the kinetic mantra in time. With that in mind, Deculion used his object control ability and pulled a notebook from inside the rubbish heap. Opening the book, Deculion saw that it was a notebook recording research data. It seemed someone had encrypted all the research results to prevent theft. But it was futile. As Deculion thought this, he used his understanding trait to scan through all the information. Immediately, a stream of brilliant golden light began to emanate from within the notebook. This made even Deculion admire it. This dazzling golden light, it's blinding. It seems his research truly is extraordinary. Thanks to combining the prosperity magnet and sharp vision, I can perceive this splendor. However, the research is still incomplete. It's torn and has many gaps. Even the logic in parts of it is completely skewed. Nevertheless, the work is grand enough to trigger the prosperity magnet. Next, he discovered a pendant clipped inside the notebook. Inside was a photo of the girl Ephraim with a man, seemingly her father. That child is Ephraim Luna, right? So that's it. It seems that when Ephraim's father worked as a researcher for Deculion, he desperately tried to hide this. The grudge the Luna family mages hold against Deculion, clearly, Ephraim's tragic life was caused by him. But don't worry. I will complete this research using the understanding trait. If I can complete the thesis that way, I'll list that person as a co-author. Of course, I also need achievements of my own, so I can't put only your name. In another development, cut to the cafe on the academy grounds, where Ephraim and a group of classmates were discussing. Inside the group, an orange-haired girl shouted, "Got it? Us commoners must unite. There are only 30 students from common backgrounds in this class. If we don't cooperate, we'll suffer sooner or later. You think the same, right, Ephraim?" She said, turning to look at Ephraim, startling her into thought. "I used to be nobility, sigh, whatever. Don't talk about fulfilling noble duties. If I don't even have a house or land, what kind of noble am I?" Thinking that, Ephraim sighed heavily. Unaware of these thoughts, the orange-haired friend continued to urge, "Understand, Ephraim. You must be here. You're the representative of the commoners. Yes, you were also a victim of Sylvia." The group chimed in and turned to Ephraim with expectant looks. This made Ephraim force a strained laugh inside. Huh, so they think I'm some kind of representative for the commoners? In another corner, a male student stammered, "Actually, if we want to form a club, we need permission from a supervising professor, right? I don't think the professors will like us gathering like this." His reminder made the orange-haired girl rub her chin and admit, that's the biggest obstacle. "How about asking Professor Relan?" She suggested that, but the male student opposite shook his head and explained, "He's famous for currying favor with nobles. That fat noble guy." "What about Professor Carmel?" she asked next, but was immediately rejected. "Don't even mention that name. As soon as he sees commoners, that professor turns his back. And of course, Professor Deculion is out of the question." Returning to Ephraim's perspective, unlike the others who were focused on plans to form a club, her head was fixed on the pile of food, drooling. "Don't they like eating that? I hope they don't eat it," she silently prayed inwardly. But before her wish could come true, the orange-haired girl suddenly banged the table and proposed, "Right. Ephraim, try asking Professor Deculion. You'll ask for us, won't you?" The friend's words turned Ephraim's face pale, while the others seemed to think the suggestion wasn't a bad one. The male student sitting next to Ephraim said, On second thought he's pretty fair. He despises everyone equally, nobles and commoners alike." Across from them, the orange-haired girl continued excitedly, "You avoided punishment because of him. Doesn't that mean you caught his attention?" Hearing that, Ephraim began to reply with an embarrassed face, "That's not true. Do you think he's that kind?" As she said this, her face kept breaking into a sweat from anxiety. Why did the atmosphere shift so oddly? "I don't want anything to do with Deculion." Thinking that, and to avoid the task of relying on Deculion falling to her, Ephraim immediately dashed off. "I can't do it anyway." "Don't say that. Keep thinking." Thinking that, and to avoid the task of relying on Deculion falling to her, Ephraim immediately dashed off. "I can't do it anyway. Don't say that. Keep thinking." So the two of them began chasing each other for a while. However, just as the orange-haired girl caught Ephraim's arm, her face suddenly went blank. This made Ephraim unable to help but ask in surprise, "What's wrong, Julia?" Before Julia could answer, a familiar voice sounded behind them. "Ephraim, step aside." Those words came from none other than our protagonist, Deculion. Seeing Deculion appear, Ephraim's face stiffened, unable to react. And when she turned around, she realized that her close friend Julia had silently slipped into the cafe sometime earlier and was giving her an encouraging look. "Good luck, Ephraim." "Julia, when did you sneak in there?" "Coward." Ephraim screamed inwardly. On our protagonist's side, he had no time to watch Ephraim and Julia exchange looks, so he simply walked away. Seeing that, although a little fearful, Ephraim had to force herself to calm down. She carefully extended the form and said, "Professor de Killian, I want to start a club and I need your signature. I don't mean to bother you, I'm just worried you might not approve a club that includes commoners." Back from de Killian's perspective, Ephraim's words caused him to pause briefly and consider the matter. I don't want to be involved with Ephraim. But she's right. The truth is that the other professors wouldn't cooperate with us. So rather than waste time on those pretenders, why not just try? With that thought, de Killian reached out to take the form, and quickly signed it, adding, "Send the details to my office." "Here, take it." De Killian returned the form to Ephraim, while Ephraim herself still couldn't believe her eyes. He actually signed. He just agreed. De Killian. Ephraim said this as she watched de Killian's retreating figure with suspicion. Meanwhile, Julia rushed over and hugged her to celebrate. "Wow, you actually got his signature. I didn't expect that." Ignoring those words, Ephraim kept her gaze fixed on de Killian. She truly couldn't understand why he acted that way. Why? Like at the disciplinary council. Why is he being nice to me? Time passed quickly, cut to de Killian's lecture hall. His class had begun. Today's lesson is understanding the pure elements. As you know, elements are the foundation of all magic. However, many mages still don't understand the difference between classified magic and pure elements. Blah blah. Below, Ephraim was still lost in a jumble of thoughts over de Killian's sudden kindness. She began to speculate inwardly. Is it because of guilt? Or sympathy? He led my father to his death. Even if he's nice to me, it feels fake. If he truly knows he's done wrong, he should reveal his true nature and repent. The more she thought, Ephraim's hands clenched and trembled. Julia beside her noticed this, and worriedly asked, "Are you okay, Ephraim? Don't worry about those kids. They do nothing but gossip." Julia said this while glancing irritably to the side, which made Ephraim somewhat puzzled. What the hell is she talking about? Following both their gazes, a short distance away a few noble students were staring at them with looks full of disdain. This made Ephraim force a smile. Haha. I've made myself an enemy of the nobles after that incident. Although I'm a noble too. Thinking that, accustomed to others' scorn, Ephraim sighed softly and said, "It's fine, Julia. They're always like that. Focus on the lesson." After saying that, she paid attention to the lecture. She'd heard rumors that de Killian's class was unusual. Unaware of her thoughts, de Killian continued teaching. The magic circles you use have meaning in each stroke. At that point, de Killian immediately used his magic, creating a magic circle above his palm, and a small flame rose from it. Then de Killian continued, "This spell can change color by adding 2 strokes to the circle, because those 2 strokes determine the flame's color. This is what we'll learn today, the flame flow." As he spoke, he used his telekinesis to make the book hover above his hand. Next, 2 orbs of energy began to gather in de Killian's left and right hands. One was green and the other blue. Ephraim's assumption was wrong. In fact, de Killian's lesson wasn't mere showmanship. As a professor, Kim Woo-jin was demonstrating beautifully, using magic to explain with deep understanding. This was shocking to the new students in the lecture hall, and the same went for Sylvia, who had lost interest in study because of her talent. Paying no mind to the astonished looks below, de Killian continued to explain each point carefully. As you know, this magic circle summons water. However, if you combine this with glyph magic, it becomes like this. Saying that, he performed the demonstration for his students. At that moment, the magic circle turned a deep purple, and the flame produced by the circle wound and flowed like a river in midair. The students in the class were dumbstruck. It actually became a stream. The fire is flowing like water. Opposite them, the most astonished was none other than Sylvia. Impossible. I didn't expect his class to be so theoretical. Most so-called genius mages use intuition in their magic, so their theories act like molds. If every mage prioritized theory, all magic would conform to the same mold. If you focus too much on theory, you won't have time to practice magic. Trying to understand every spell purely through theory is inefficient and makes training difficult. This is the paradox of magic. To become a high-level mage you must have strong intuition. But high-level mages cannot explain their intuition with theory. For someone whose genius is being questioned by others, dedicating a lesson to theory like this is unthinkable. The more she thought, the more curious Sylvia became. Time passed quickly, cut to the dormitories of the magic tower. Ephraim had just finished Decillian's class and returned to her room. As she walked, she sighed. Huh. It's really different from the rumors. I've never concentrated this much in a class. She spoke, her gaze troubled as she noticed the door covered in countless insulting graffiti. However, Ephraim wasn't angry, she just found it annoying. How long are these people going to keep playing this joke? It's gotten worse since my clash with Sylvia. As she said this, Ephraim paused when she noticed a paper bag wedged in the door crack. Reading what was written on it, confusion crossed Ephraim's face. A sponsorship certificate. Wow. I almost believed it was real. There's no way this is real. Who would sponsor me when both the Illade family and Decillian hate me? Actually, it's a good thing. I can report it and claim the reward. Ephraim chuckled and quickly went to the Magic Administration office to inquire. But after receiving confirmation from the staff, Ephraim's face went blank. It's real. Ephraim recalled the moment the staff member said, "It's not a joke, the seal is genuine." She couldn't help but shout, "What? Are you kidding?" Just the thought of suddenly having a sum of money fall into her lap made her face blossom with joy. She even doubted if this was a dream and pinched her cheek to check. This will wake me up. Come on, wake up. Then, suddenly, Ephraim's expression turned anxious. Wait. No one saw me, right? What if people find out I have 100,000 elm? I should pack my things in case something happens. I shouldn't go to the Magic Administration. That staff member had a strange look. She might be coveting my money. Oh no, I should have been more careful. Ephraim shouted. The moment she stood up, her small head collided hard with the front of the table, making her clutch her head and tremble in pain. Pausing for a beat, a wave of emotion began to spread through Ephraim's body. Tears welled at the corners of her eyes. I'm not dreaming yet. Someone noticed my talent. There are still kind people in this world. Keep going. Just a little more. Ephraim urged herself. In another development, Uriel had just been told some bad news by the butler, prompting her to ask, "Are you serious?" The butler in front of her nodded in confirmation. Yes, he went to the Schatzenjewel auction. He should have arrived by now. This made Uriel frantic with irritation. He lost 10 million elm last year, what disaster is he going to cause this year? If he causes trouble again, I won't forgive him, she shouted. Then the scene cut to Luton City, Schatzenjewel. At that moment, Decillian's carriage had just arrived at the auction house. Here, of course, Decillian wasn't someone idle doing frivolous things. He came with a purpose. Finally I can buy what I want. Using psychokinesis as his primary magic for the first time, he realized he needed more metal to compensate for his limited talent. The items I always carry are made of steelwood, but that's only a temporary solution. What I really need will be at today's auction. With that thought, Decillian opened the door and stepped into the waiting room. However, upon entering, he immediately saw an unexpected figure, his fiancée. Yulia was also sitting inside. Ah, damn. Why is she here? I didn't expect to run into Yulia in a place like this. Decillian complained inwardly. At the same time, Yulia noticed his presence. She frowned and stepped lightly toward Decillian with an unhappy expression. I hope you're well. I heard you handed 2 young mages over to the disciplinary council this time. Hearing that, Decillian calmly replied with a cold face, that news is old. Is there a problem? Are you going to blame me? Yulia was silent for a few seconds, then continued, they're all newcomers. Do you want to crush their dreams? Someday you'll feel remorse. Don't repeat the mistakes of the past. This is my final advice to you. Across from her, Decillian inwardly rejoiced at those words. Final advice. Those are Yulia's last words to me. Perhaps she's planning to cut ties. Fine, I think that's for the best. No matter how beautiful she is, I don't want to marry. There's no reason to bind myself in this world to something I've never experienced in real life. Besides, there are too many deadly variables around her, including herself. If I'm careless I could die at my own wedding. But, Yulia isn't the type to attend auctions, so why is she here? Dekilian, curious, bluntly asked, did you come all the way to the auction just to tell me this? The suspicion in his voice made Yulia startle. Then she fluffed up like an angry cat and shouted, stop being delusional. I'm not here to find you. I'm here because there's something I need. I told you, I'm really here to bid. Seeing her flustered, Dekilian raised a hand to reassure her. Alright, calm down, say it once and I get it. Yulia pouted, still seeming annoyed, then turned and walked away decisively. Meanwhile, Dekilian watched her retreating figure and gave a slight smile. She's truly adorable. It's the first time I've seen her like that. Then, Dekilian suddenly felt a jolt. Wait, what was that feeling? I just thought about how dangerous it would be to be with her. Could I have been influenced by Dekilian's emotions? I was careful to keep my personality from merging. Something's off. This heart suddenly raced when I saw her. Right. I must be overthinking. He stroked his chin in thought. At the same time, an announcement sounded, notice to all guests of Shatsenjul, the auction is about to begin. Time passed quickly. Cut to the auction hall, on stage sat a large table with an item covered by a cloth. The host signaled an attendant to pull the cloth away, revealing a porcelain vase. Seeing it, the host enthusiastically advertised, introducing the first item, the Oriental vase. Behold these graceful curves. This is the work of an Eastern artisan. From Dekilian's perspective, he began to see fierce streams of golden aura emanating from the vase. The radiance was so intense it nearly blinded him. This is the light I saw when I checked Yulia's documents. That light kept growing stronger. If that's the case. Above, the host started calling out bidders. Number 993 bids 700,000. Number 1038 bids 750,000. Number 1413 bids 1,500,000. Oh, guest number 777 bids 2,500,000. Congratulations to guest 777 on winning the item. Back in Dekilian's view, thanks to his wealthy magnate instincts, he could easily gauge the value of the auctioned items and spared no expense buying them. This vase never lost its glow despite the rising price, meaning it could go even higher. I have enough in my account to invest the rest. Dekilian's current balance is 205,238,039 L. Thus, Dekilian began acquiring a series of items for his collection. Rollerine's ring was sold to guest 777 for 3 million. Luxiu's scepter was sold for 2.1 million to guest 777. The Ngu necklace was also sold for 4.3 million to guest 777. This time, guest 777 secured the item for 5.5 million. Around them, other guests, seeing how boldly number 777 was spending, looked on curiously. Wow, number 777 bought them all. Isn't that Professor Dekilian? Elsewhere, the night Yulia sighed at Dekilian's lavish, wasteful spending and scoffed inwardly. That pathetic name. He wants attention even in a place like this. He's so different from me. Unbelievable. How can he spend a fortune for a fleeting vanity? I don't understand why he lacks modesty, but fine, whatever. I just need to win the winter flame. Yulia reminded herself and quickly refocused on the auction. Soon, the auction neared its end. Now, the final item of today's auction was officially revealed. Many desired it, but it was nearly impossible to find. It was a stone used to forge countless great swords in history, a naturally magical stone, the winter flame, snowstone. The host's voice rang out as the covering cloth was pulled aside. Before everyone's eyes lay a bluish mineral outcrop, shimmering with light. The moment they saw this item, both Dekilian and Yulia widened their eyes, because it was the very reason they had come today. It is one of the 10 rarest metals in the world, commonly used to forge swords or other weapons. As its name suggests, it is a rare, strange item that carries both cold and fire energies. Only items of legendary tier like dragon bone surpass it for sword-making. Therefore, snowstone is undoubtedly the best material I could obtain. I absolutely must get it. This is what I need. Both of them thought silently, but it wasn't just Achillean and Yulia. Naturally, many attendees at the auction also had their sights set on this ultra-rare item. Bids quickly climbed at a dizzying pace. 10 million. 13 million. 20 million. 25 million. Number 1089 bids 30 million. Any more? If not, the item will belong to. At that point, Yulia's face lit up with joy, because bidder number 1089 was her. Great! I'm about to get it. She thought. However, at that moment, Achillean thwarted her by bidding higher. Number 777 bids 31 million. Hearing that number, her expression went blank. Then she turned angrily to look at Achillean. Number 777. How many times have I heard that number today? I can't just let him have it. Why would you do that, Achillean? Then the back and forth bidding escalated, driving the price up even faster. Elsewhere, the other bidders gave up contesting the snowstone. Meanwhile, a man who recognized Achillean turned to him and said, "You want to buy snowstone to make a sword? Surely it's to gift your fiancée, right? But if you want to gift it, you could just let her buy it herself. You must love your fiancée very much." The man's words made Achillean's gaze falter slightly. He looked toward Yulia ahead. Only then did he realize, am I competing with my fiancée? Am I bidding against Yulia? She must also be interested in snowstone. If I take it, she'll definitely hate me. But I need it too. This is its first appearance in 3 years. Who knows when there will be a second chance? I might be in danger, but for my item, I absolutely must win the snowstone. So, it was obvious who would end up with the snowstone. Final, 42 million elm, the owner of the snowstone is bidder number 777. Hearing this, the surrounding guests applauded and congratulated Achillean, marveling at his extravagance. How exciting! Professor Achillean bought them, right? At that price, this might be the most dramatic auction I've ever seen. Oh, Yulia is going to be so pleased. Professor Achillean worked hard to secure a gift for his beloved, and he obtained what he wanted. From Yulia's perspective, an intense anger swelled inside her with nowhere to vent. Once again, this is happening just like last year. I don't want this. Images of Achillean laying out countless gems and jewelry on a table and proudly saying, I can give you all of this, and if you want, I can buy more. I'll do anything for you, began to form in Yulia's mind. For her, that engagement day was the worst day of her life. This will win me her heart, look how magnificent I am. That is what Yulia heard Achillean say amid the wealth he flaunted. She felt only humiliation. Do you know what I truly wanted from you? So I left, destroyed my own engagement with my own hands. However, that was not all. After that day, countless rumors surfaced. She tried to act strong but ended up in Achillean's arms anyway. I heard she only got promoted to captain of the knights because of that. They say she begged him. At such slanderous talk, Yulia's hand tightened. It was obvious who had spread the rumors that ruined her reputation back then. Does he expect me to take revenge? That man is someone I can never love. No matter how hard I try. Yulia thought, clenching her hands until they trembled. Then, just as she stood up, preparing to leave the auction in fury, is someone I can never love. No matter how hard I try. Yulia thought, clenching her hands until they trembled. The protagonist's words angered Yulia, and her expression darkened. She asked herself silently, how long will Achillean keep insulting me? Right now, please forgive me. After saying this, the protagonist turned and left immediately, leaving behind his fiancée standing there stunned. Yulia wasn't sure if she had misheard. What? Why is he apologizing? Is it because he bought the snowstone? With that question in her heart, Yulia slowly exited the auction hall, and just as she stepped outside, someone called out, Hey, Yulia! Get in the carriage. The voice belonged to a beautiful young woman. She was the eldest daughter of the Fryden family and Yulia's older sister. Time passed quickly into evening. By then, Dekillian's fancy carriage had escorted him back to his manor. Inside the carriage, Dekillian was still troubled, thinking about Yulia. It seemed Yulia planned to craft a weapon for herself with the snow stone, but I outbid her. So she must be angry. I'm a bit surprised the death variable hasn't occurred yet. After all, how dreadful would I have to be for her to kill me herself? Dekillian asked himself quietly and hurried into the manor. Seeing him return, the servants all bowed. However, their faces looked troubled. This caught Dekillian's attention and he asked, "Did something happen?" The butler, awkwardly, answered, "Miss Uriel has returned home." Without needing more words, Dekillian guessed he was about to be berated by his sister. What must happen will happen. So he calmly climbed to the second floor. There, his sister Uriel was already waiting. As Dekillian passed by, as always, Uriel called out, "That's my money. You said you'd hold it for a while, and this is what you do." Hearing her, Dekillian understood why so much money was in his account. At the same time, he felt a pang of guilt. I didn't realize she had that much. Have I always been so thoughtless? He then reassured her, "Don't worry. I only buy things that yield profit." In response, Uriel's scream echoed through the manor, "You treat me like a garbage bin. Do you think I'm here to clean up your mess?" Dekillian felt a sinking dread. He slowly turned and saw the hatred-filled, tear-blurred look Uriel gave him. Uriel went on to recount the hardships she had endured caring for that wretched Dekillian. "Our family's finances are in trouble. The workers and I have worked non-stop to hold this house together. And you wasted all that money. How rotten must he be to gamble away the family's money like that?" From Dekillian's perspective, he now saw a black-red aura rising from Uriel, sending a chill down his spine. This signaled that his fated death was drawing near. Dekillian's face tightened in discomfort. Damn it! Has the villain's fate been triggered? There's a golden glint in her red aura, the prosperity magnet has been activated too. Its meaning is simple: if I don't get through this, I'm done for. But if I survive it, I'll end up with a pile of money. I know how to handle this. Then, to save his miserable life, Dekillian lowered his voice and pleaded, "Don't worry, Uriel." Before he could finish, his sister shouted, "Shut up. Do I look like I'm worried? Have I worked hard for you just so you'd throw it out the window? You think I wanted this? Do you know I dropped out of college and can't find a lover because of you?" "I didn't have to do that," Dekillian said calmly. But his words only made Uriel angrier. Her hands clenched as if ready to teach her brother a lesson. "What the hell are you talking about? You do nothing but burn money. After our parents died, you blew 150 million elm in a single day, you." Not letting her finish, our protagonist cut her off with an appealing offer, "I'll hand the headship back to you." The remark left Uriel stunned, forgetting her anger and dumbly asking, "What did you just say?" In response, Dekillian reiterated, "I'll give you the headship of the family." Hearing this, Uriel's face flushed. She let out an adorably loud shriek and cried, "Ridiculous." Dekillian across from her glanced at her with a judging look. "That's not how a noble, or a head of a family, speaks. Don't try to fool me," Uriel said, turning aside. Dekillian insisted he wasn't lying and, if necessary, could swear an oath if Uriel didn't believe him. This immediately startled his sister, who asked, "What? Swear? You mean a mage's oath? You'd die if you broke that oath. Are you serious?" "Yes," Dekillian answered calmly. From Uriel's point of view, she couldn't tell whether Dekillian had eaten spoiled food to make him say this. But, it made no sense. Why would he suddenly say that? Did he hit his head? Dekillian nonchalantly, "You don't have to believe me." Hearing this, though astonished, Uriel provisionally believed him. Still, she warned Dekillian, "If you go back on your word, I'll kill you on the spot." Dekillian replied, "Will you leave the house?" "Of course I will. Someone spent all the family's money, so I have to do something." After saying that, Uriel left happily. As for Dekillian, thanks to his quick thinking, he survived this death variable and gained 2 shop coins. Once he saw Uriel go, Dekillian finally exhaled in relief. "Phew, the storm has passed. Luckily I'm unscathed." Letting her take the position isn't so bad. If I change things bit by bit like this, I can avoid death. Just as he thought that, a familiar voice suddenly called from the window, "Have you really changed?" The sudden voice startled Deculion. He glanced toward the sound and saw the person who was speaking was the adventurer Ganesha, an uninvited guest. Deculion said coldly. Meanwhile, Ganesha swung herself into the room and explained, "Sorry, I was passing by and dropped in. I was quite surprised to see you like this." In response, Deculion folded his arms and sighed, "Why be surprised? She's the one who handles the work better than I do." Answering, Ganesha began to relay some deeply troubling news, but Uriel von Grandhan Yukline does not carry the bloodline of the Yukline family. This made Deculion, who normally wore a calm expression, startle and turn around. What is she saying? I don't remember that being in the game. From Deculion's viewpoint, he hurriedly tried to recall all the information he knew about Uriel. Uriel was said to be a half-sister. I knew she wasn't Deculion's biological sister. However, she has no blood relation to the Yukline family at all. I had no idea about that. For reasons Deculion couldn't determine, Ganesha asked on, "Is this really okay? You're the one who asked us to do this, Professor, to determine whether you and your sister are blood-related. We already agreed to this, remember?" Hearing that, Deculion quickly understood. So that's the context. Thinking it over, he shook his head slightly and replied, "Even so, Uriel is still Uriel." This answer made Ganesha so surprised she broke out in a sweat. Wow! You're astonishing me today. I didn't expect you to say something like that. Not only her, even Deculion felt surprised at his own words. I'm surprised too. I didn't expect such a scenario to exist. Back in Ganesha's perspective, she had only intended to drop by and say a few words, so she now prepared to leave. All right, I'll keep your sister's secret. Oh, one more thing before I go, I heard the six-headed serpent has begun to move. Behind him, Deculion's mind quickly ran through information about that organization. The six-headed serpent, they are the leaders of a notorious criminal syndicate on this continent. They're so infamous that the bounties on their heads are worth millions. At the window, the adventurer continued, they're targeting items at the auction house. Even though the auction house tries to transport them safely, you should be on high alert when any items are delivered to your home. It seems you've been neglecting your defensive magic lately, Professor. That's why I could get in so easily. I'm off now. After saying that, Ganesha flashed and immediately vanished. Before Deculion, and for Deculion, our protagonist's head ached non-stop. He put a hand to his forehead and thought, that's something I don't need to know, knowing won't change anything. From the start, I was never Deculion. Whether Uriel is my biological sister or not, I'll still treat her the same. Uriel will always be Deculion's sister. So, it's better to hide the truth. Scene change. Elsewhere, Ganesha was recounting Deculion's behavioral changes to her teammates. I told you so. Professor Deculion has changed a lot. It's like someone else is inhabiting his body. Now he's completely different. That bastard speaking sweet words like that is really strange. Ganesha said with some amusement. However, a man across from her shook his head and scoffed, "Captain, you're just into handsome men. Whatever he says, you like it." Hearing that, Ganesha immediately bristled and shouted, "So should I punish you for being ugly?" The teammate sneered in reply, "My grandmother says I'm very handsome." It's just that there was a handsome guy standing behind you at the time, you idiot. Ganesha shouted loudly. Then the two of them lunged at each other and brawled, making Rayline next to them only sigh and ask, "You say Deculion really has good character?" Hearing this, Ganesha temporarily stopped bullying her teammate, adjusted the tilted hat on her head and said, "Well, we don't need to keep following Deculion. I wanted to ask whether he's still looking for magic slaves, but probably not. Shall we head back now?" Saying that, Ganesha's expression grew serious as she warned, "By the way, what everyone heard today is a secret. You should all keep this to yourselves." After saying that, the five of them clasped hands at the same time. Then a sphere of light enveloped the group, and shot up into the sky. Time passed. The next day, scene shifts to the Magic Academy. Inside his office, Dekillian had finally saved enough to access the system shop. Yet he hesitated as he looked at the system screen. Level 1, System Shop, Enhance Magic Quality Level 1. Your character's magic quality will be improved. Magic output and effectiveness increase slightly. Price, 10 coins. Seeing that number, our protagonist could only groan miserably. Finally, I can use the system shop, but I still don't have enough to buy what I need. This system lets you spend shop coins to boost your character. You can enhance not only your player character but also notable characters. However, opportunities to use the system shop are scarce. You only have 6 uses before the end of the second half. That's because you can only use the shop once per level, and each time you level up the cost doubles. I can't rush and miss this precious opportunity. I continuously train my memory, condition my body, and practice controlling the sword with my mind by integrating them into daily life. But I'm still lacking combat power compared to those notorious criminals. To progress, what I need is to raise my magic quality. I must quickly collect the 4 more shop coins I need. Dekillian reminded himself just before a knock at the door outside pulled him from his reverie. Dekillian nodded and said, "Come in." Outside, his assistant Alan poked his head in and greeted, "Hello, Professor. Look, I just received this." Alan then grew serious, "I think you should be careful. This was just posted in today's Witch Gazette." Opposite him, Dekillian reached out and took the paper. On the front page, a long-haired criminal's photo appeared with a bold headline, "Wanted, Lockhart. Witnesses report the murderer of the witch Lockhart is in the outskirts. Be careful when going out." For someone like Dekillian who'd played this storyline thousands of times, he was all too familiar with this figure. The murderer of the witch Lockhart. He's the greatest threat to mage players in the early game. So he's shown up already. Of course, if I were a regular mage he'd be a genuine threat. But now I don't need to worry. Maybe this will help me earn a few shop coins. Hopefully I'll encounter him. Thinking that, Dekillian reassured Alan, "Don't worry about the witch murderer. I'm heading to the library, you can go on back." Having said that, as if remembering something, Dekillian paused in his tracks. He turned and asked Alan, "Hey, Alan, would you like to become the professor's assistant?" The sudden offer from the protagonist made Alan's eyes widen like a bull's. He shouted loudly, "You want me to be the professor's assistant? But you always say I'm incompetent. Now that I see you're serious I'm asking." Dekillian shrugged in response. But honestly, he didn't come up with this out of nowhere. He'd been reminded earlier that he should choose an assistant, since every professor has one and Dekillian was the only one without a pick. He'd also been a senior professor for several years. Beside him, Alan stammered as if wanting to explain something. But our protagonist didn't want to waste time on it and cut him off. "That's enough. Take this." After saying that, Dekillian produced a bracelet engraved with the Yukline family crest. "Keep working hard." Alan looked at the bracelet before him in astonishment. By this time, our friend Alan no longer foolishly refused. He hurriedly accepted the bracelet and bowed in thanks. "Thank you very much, Professor." "A bracelet engraved with the Yukline crest?" he said, looking at the bracelet with teary eyes. Watching Alan so happy he might cry, Dekillian thought to himself, "Alan is excellent at managing documents and running errands. He's very useful, I can't let him leave." Everyone who was disgusted by Dekillian's cruelty had left because they couldn't stand it. But Alan still handled all those tasks alone. Who knows when he might go? Thinking that, Dekillian took out some money and gave it to Alan as a staff benefit, adding, "Take the rest of the day off. Use this money to buy dinner." From Alan's perspective, being handed money so suddenly made him a bit anxious as he said, "Professor, this is too much." Ignoring Alan's words, Dekillian quickly headed to the library, leaving Alan standing there dazed, watching his retreating back. Scene changed to the staff library. As he walked, Dekillian thought, "The reason I'm coming to the library is because of Luna's papers. The papers I found in the lab were an invention about pure elements. However, it has many errors and gaps, so I need to fix it. If I can find any useful magical tomes related to manipulation, all the better." With that thought, Dekillian quickened his pace slightly. However, as he passed a bookshelf, his gaze was drawn to a small figure. "What are you doing in the staff library?" New student Sylvia. Across from him, when Sylvia met de Killian's gaze, she froze in surprise. To explain this, we must go back about 10 minutes. Sylvia had gone to the librarian to request access to this library. The librarian then contacted some professor. "Yes, professor. Sylvia is looking for study materials. But this is a reading room exclusive to senior staff." In response, the plump Professor Retlon smiled and agreed, "It's fine. There's no need to ban the heir of the Ilade family or this new student. Let her use it freely for her studies." Seeing that, the librarian didn't stop her and nodded, telling Sylvia, he said, "It's fine, Sylvia. Feel free to search." So Sylvia began wandering through the library to find the books she needed. Sylvia's hobby is literature and languages. She came to the exclusive library to find materials that meet her criteria. The novel she sought was ethanol, but with the disappearance of the Fae, its value rose and ethanol became rare. That's why Sylvia came to the exclusive reading room, a place she didn't usually visit. And of course, she didn't expect to run into de Killian here. De Killian? Why is he here? I was told he doesn't come near the library. Sylvia worriedly thought, but quickly explained, "I'm here to look for materials. Professor Retlon allowed me." In front of her, de Killian still wore a stern face as he said, "So that means that Professor ignored academy rules, and the librarian let you in anyway? If that's the case, they deserve discipline." De Killian's words made Sylvia stammer, at a loss for what to say. Then, before she could explain further, de Killian used his telekinesis to retrieve the book from Sylvia's hands. "Let's check it out. This is the novel Ethanol. You broke the rules just to find a romantic novel written in ethanol." De Killian's voice was teasing, causing Sylvia's face to flush. She hurriedly said, "Huh? How can you read ethanol's language?" "Wait. That's not important. I just like literature and languages." Then, for some reason, de Killian tossed the book back to Sylvia and admonished, "I'll let this slide this time. However, if you come here again without proper permission, I'll discipline you. So if your purpose isn't to flaunt your family's influence, have someone else borrow the books for you." Having said that, de Killian left immediately, leaving Sylvia standing dazed. She hugged the book to her chest and thought, "Did he insult me? I just wanted to learn about the Fae through the novel Ethanol." But how could Professor de Killian possibly read ethanol? The ethanol language lacks consistency, which makes it hard to read. The more she thought about it, the more perplexed this prodigy became. Scene shifts to some pine forest. At this time, there was an outdoor lesson for new students. They chased small beasts, then gathered herbs. To ensure safety for this lesson, 3 professors, including de Killian, were supervising. On one side, the portly Professor Retlon wiped the sweat from his face with a cloth and said, "This is their first field experience. They seem too calm. I expected them to be afraid of Black Mountain. Training must stop at dusk, but I'm proud of them." De Killian looked around and thought, Black Mountain. It's far from the academy. Black Mountain holds great significance and is heavily guarded by the Magic Tower. Its forest is considered a training ground for students and also a rich repository of magical materials. Therefore, the risk of attacks by monsters and poisonous creatures is high. Thus, the Magic Tower must strengthen protective barriers and ensure patrols by on-duty professors. Returning to Retlon, as if remembering something, he scratched his head and said to the protagonist, "Oh right, Professor de Killian. The appointment for this week's duty hasn't been decided. We need to assign someone new. Who do you think is suitable?" In response, de Killian volunteered himself. "Let me do it." Hearing that, the fat Retland's eyes showed a flash of surprise, but he quickly agreed and didn't forget to praise de Killian, just as I expected from a professor. The way you lead is a model example of an academy instructor. Back to de Killian, faced with such flattery, he kept a cold expression. And of course, he's not stupid enough to take on heavy work for noble reasons. I'm not doing this for any lofty cause. As he thought that, de Killian glanced at the mission screen that had been sent to him. Side quest, Darkness of the Magic Tower, reward, shop coin +1, additional title reward. Returning to Deculion, he began to sense something pulling at his mind. Something was drawing him over there. That's probably why I received the side quest. Something was about to happen on this mountain that could turn the game into a horror story at night. Deculion frowned in thought, while the two other professors began to gather everyone and announced, "Now, start packing up." "Goodbye, Professor." One student called out. "All right, see you later." They nodded. Time passed quickly. 9 hours later, at a cafe near the Magic Tower, the mage Ephraim, after receiving sponsorship funds, decided to treat her friends to sundaes. Seeing the sparkling treats before them, the group exclaimed, "Wow! They look amazing. Too pretty to eat." "They look delicious too. You really bought these for us, Ephraim?" In return, Ephraim gave a bright smile. "Of course. Dig in, because I now have 100,000 coins." Ephraim murmured to herself, and the friends stopped being polite. While eating, her close friend Retlon said, "I've submitted the club formation plan. It will be approved soon. This is our first gathering." Hearing that, the blue-haired guy opposite grew a little anxious about forming the club. "I just hope others won't hesitate too much. There aren't many sign-ups." "Don't worry, as long as we run the club well, people will join," Julia replied confidently. "By the way, I heard there's training at Black Mountain today." Ephraim, still gazing at her sundae with sparkling eyes, answered, "That's right. 50 volunteers signed up, though there have been many accidents there." As soon as those words ended, a tremendous noise suddenly rang out, making the whole group jump. "Did you hear that?" "You heard it too. Where did it come from? We need to check it out." Saying that, the young friends hurriedly ran toward where the sound came from. From afar, an urgent voice rang out, "Help me." Hearing this, Ephraim immediately grew anxious and sped up. However, at the same time, Julia seemed to sense something wrong and hurriedly tried to stop her. "Something's not right, Ephraim. Stop!" she cried, reaching forward as if to pull Ephraim back, but it was already too late. From Ephraim's point of view, when she heard the call, she turned and asked, "What did you just say, Julia?" No sooner had the words left her than Ephraim realized something strange. She was no longer standing on the street. She was in a deeply unfamiliar forest. "Where is this? I was just on the street." Before she could figure out why she was there, the cry for help sounded again, "Help me." The voice startled Ephraim. "Right. Someone's calling for help. Where are you?" "I'm coming to help." "I'm here," the voice replied. Seeing that, Ephraim immediately dashed toward the source. In front of her stood a young woman with long hair covering her face. "Are you all right?" Ephraim asked anxiously. But at that moment, the strange woman suddenly began to spew blood incessantly, her anguished cries echoing in all directions. Seeing this, Ephraim instantly became on guard. She quickly gathered mana into her fist, thinking, "What the hell is this? Is someone attacking her?" But before the girl could wonder long, a cold figure appeared in her sight, Deculion. Around him, sharp wood and metal fragments hovered and spun. Immediately, Ephraim guessed that Deculion had attacked the woman and demanded, "Professor, did you just attack that woman? How could you strike a civilian?" Deculion merely stared at the strange woman, then said coldly, "Open your eyes and look again. She's not human." "What?" Ephraim cried out in astonishment. When she turned to look, everything was as Deculion said. The strange woman had vanished. In her place stood a humanoid monster. Its skin and eyes were blood red, white smoke poured constantly from its mouth, and it looked extremely ferocious. The sight made Ephraim recoil a step in fear. She stammered, that, what is it?" In response, Deculion only glanced back and said coldly, "It seems you've been charmed. This is the work of demons. Don't interfere and leave." Having said that, Deculion immediately used his manipulation magic, hurling Ephraim's small body out of the area. After seeing Ephraim vanish from view, he coldly turned to observe the demon before him and whispered, "Now, it's time to hunt." The red demon roared in fury at losing its prey. Without being told, both Deculion and the demon lunged at each other at wind-ripping speed. Attacks came in a relentless barrage, clashing violently in the night. The red demon let out an enraged cry and shot forward like a bullet toward Decillion. As it closed in on him, it swung an arm bristling with razor claws. But Decillion swiftly manipulated the wood and metal fragments into a barrier across his chest, stopping the attack, while he himself retreated to maintain distance and analyze. Looking at the core on the demon's forehead, Decillion thought, its trait must be illusion. But thanks to my resolve, my resistance to mental attacks, it has no effect on me. My blood is boiling. The Yukline bloodline makes me furious. Yukline attribute, unique rank. Description, a lineage with exceptional power in demon slaying. When facing demons or in areas heavy with dark mana, you can purify surrounding mana with your own and use it to enhance your strength. At full activation, combat ability rises to a new level, but in return you become more ferocious and gradually lose control of yourself. The heirs of the Yukline legacy were famed demon hunters since ancient times. Now that blood boils within Decillion, he will never let the demon before him survive. Rage erupted. Decillion clenched his fist, his gaze colder than ever. However, the red demon had no idea of the horror awaiting it. Like a crazed beast, it charged to attack. Die! Decillion grunted. The sharp wood and metal fragments shot forward, slicing through the air. Time quickly passed. Now the massive body of the demon lay collapsed in a pool of blood. There was no life left in it. At the same time, Decillion received a system notification, side quest, Darkness of the Magic Tower, completed. Shop coin +1, additional title reward, first demon slain, Yukline attribute unlocked. Decillion narrowed his eyes, looked at the corpse before him and sneered, filthy creature, even in death it only spews filth. He slightly frowned. A twinge of concern stirred in Decillion. The appearance of this demon is not normal. This is a sign heralding the beginning. The start of a game more difficult than ever. Time quickly passed until morning. Scene shifts to the Academy Hospital, where the prodigy Ephorine suddenly awoke from her stupor. Beside her, a nurse saw this and said, "You're awake, Luna." Hearing her name, Ephorine blinked, looked around in confusion and asked, "What happened?" "I was in the forest and," before she could finish, the nurse, understanding what she meant, answered immediately, "Yes. It seems you don't remember everything from last night. A demon appeared on Black Mountain. You were struck by its dark charm and lost consciousness. Afterward you were found and brought to the infirmary. Black Mountain has been sealed off due to that demon's appearance, and the Magic Tower is investigating." Pausing, the nurse continued, "Ah, and Professor Decillion was the one who saved you." Hearing that, Ephorine's face turned sour as she muttered inwardly, "Damn it, him again." Then, as if remembering something, she hurriedly asked the nurse, "Wait. What day is it today?" The nurse thought for a moment and replied, "Let's see. It's been 36 hours since you were brought here, so today is Wednesday." Back in Ephorine's perspective. Hearing this, the girl widened her eyes and screamed in panic, "Wait. If today is Wednesday then I'm going to be late." Next, she bolted out of the hospital in a mad dash toward the lecture hall. When she arrived she was panting like an ox, huff. Huff. That was close. Inside the lecture hall, her friend Julia saw Ephorine and waved excitedly, "Ephorine. Over here. Are you okay? I came to the infirmary to visit you, but you weren't awake then." Ephorine nodded in reply, "I'm fine. Actually, I'm in the best shape right now because I overslept." After speaking, she glanced around and noticed some strange ingredients on the table. She frowned and asked, "But, what are these? Is there a new announcement for today's class that I missed?" Julia looked too and shook her head, "I don't know. It's been like this since I arrived. There must be a special class today." Not keeping them in suspense long, Decillion entered the classroom shortly after, accompanied by his teaching assistant Alan. Decillion's steady voice sounded, "Before we begin, I have an announcement. This is Alan. He is my teaching assistant." The class gasped and looked at each other in disbelief. "What? I thought Professor Decillion preferred to teach alone." "That's right. I heard he never had an assistant before, but to become a teaching assistant, one must be evaluated and nominated by the professor. No way would Dekillian allow that to happen, right? Whispers and murmurs began to spread. Ephorine's face grew tense. She was one of the few who knew how difficult it was to become Dekillian's assistant. What does this mean? Many questions crowded her mind. That's also why her father, despite being a 30-year-old researcher, never had a chance to be an assistant. So why did Dekillian bring in a maid she'd never seen before? Thinking that, she glanced at Alan with a complicated look. However, Dekillian made no effort to explain. He simply declared, "Today's lesson will be based on practical experience. Try to solve this exercise within 3 hours." After he spoke, Alan quickly went to each desk and handed everyone a watch. "This is your watch. And this." Back in Ephorine's thoughts, Dekillian's sudden announcement of an assistant left her unsettled, making it hard for her to focus on the test. "My father's legacy, this bracelet, I always ask myself. When will I become stronger? When will I prove myself?" Instinctively, she looked down at her wrist, a habit she'd kept for a long time. "To Dekillian, who is my father? Why won't he give my father a chance? And why is he doing these good deeds now?" Ephorine shook her head and told herself, "No. I can't lose focus. I must finish this task. I need to come up with a spell quickly." But, her mind remained clouded with too many thoughts. At that moment, the clear voice of the prodigy Sylvia suddenly rang out, drawing everyone's attention. 25 minutes 50 seconds. "I'm done." Hearing this, everyone turned to Sylvia in amazement. Flowers began to bloom before her, radiating a splendid aura. "What? Not even 30 minutes? Of course. That's Sylvia." Turning to Dekillian, he stared intently at Sylvia, making the small girl feel pressured and break into a sweat. But then Dekillian simply nodded, "Perfect. You may go." Hearing that, Sylvia's eyes lit up with joy. She unconsciously glanced at Ephorine beside her and noticed she was still struggling with the pile of ingredients. Sylvia sighed in relief. Ephorine noticed this too. She gritted her teeth in anger and thought, "Damn it. I have to finish this too." As time passed, the other students finished their tests one by one. Dekillian's voice continued across the classroom, "Julia, you may go. Lehin, you may go as well. Poton, you may go. Kane, you may go. Ihan, you may go." Students left the room in turn. On this side, Ephorine still hadn't completed her task. Perhaps influenced by Dekillian, but even after all the students had left and night had fallen, she still hadn't accomplished anything. Ephorine's face went blank as she berated herself. "I'm finished. Please, come up with something. Please think of something," she muttered to herself, forcing her mind to think. "Can't I do better than that damned Sylvia? I'm even the only one who couldn't accomplish anything the whole class. Why, am I really so stupid that I can't finish a simple exercise like this?" She clenched her fist in anger. "Yes. I'm just ignorant. Revenge my ass. I haven't even studied properly. How can I compete with them?" Thinking that, she ground her teeth in frustration. Still, sitting in the classroom wouldn't solve anything. Finally, Ephorine slowly stood up, intending to leave. However, at that moment, Dekillian's cold voice rang out, 5 hours and 47 minutes. "How long do you intend to keep me waiting?" Ephorine's eyes widened in surprise. "Dekillian. He's still here." She was filled with astonishment. Dekillian looked at her, his tone icy. "You had trouble with an easy exercise and failed to complete it on time. Even though others finished before you, even when someone you despise finished right in front of you, you must keep a cool, clear head at all times. With such a weak mindset, you'll never reach my level. I'm disappointed, Ephorine. I thought you would do better." With that, Dekillian quickly left the room, leaving Ephorine standing motionless there. No one knew what she was thinking. Time passed. Ephorine slowly sat back down at the desk, replaying Dekillian's disappointed words before he left. Her hand curled into a fist, shaking uncontrollably from agitation. She clenched her teeth, bit her lip, and ground out, "So what? I can do it. Even if someone like him is disappointed in me. I can still do it. No matter the consequences. Ephraim shouted, then began focusing her magic, determined to finish the exercise at all costs. Back at Deculian's position. In truth, he hadn't left, he was standing just outside the door, quietly sensing the mana fluctuations inside the room and feeling a little relieved. This shouldn't be a problem. I've spent over 6 hours on Ephraim, but it was necessary. I need Ephraim to be stronger to prepare for future events. Because of the demon's appearance on Black Mountain, Deculian knew the main quest was about to begin. When an era of evil runs rampant, those who follow the path of good will appear in the main quest. Among them will be a stronger Ephraim. Right now, she still lacks the mental strength and sensitivity of a mage. But once Ephraim overcomes this obstacle, she will progress very quickly. Of course, that power will threaten me, but I will not allow it to happen. Fate is just an idea for those unwilling to strive. I only trust myself. With Deculian's personality, he would hardly allow anyone to catch up to him. As he thought this, he sensed the mana fluctuations in the room had ceased. Then the classroom door was flung open forcefully, and Ephraim stormed out, scowling. She didn't even notice that Deculian was standing there. After watching the young girl leave, Deculian calmly entered the classroom to check Ephraim's test results. As no surprise to him, the flowers had bloomed brilliantly. Seeing this, a smile unexpectedly appeared on the protagonist's cold face. He whispered, 6 hours and 25 minutes. The exercise is complete. After speaking, he took out a sheet of paper with Ephraim's picture on it and wrote something down. As he wrote, he muttered, the girl has revealed the innate weakness of an academy student. Still, this result is worthy of contesting for first place. At the same time, the system issued a notification, congratulations. Side quest completed, your path. Shop XP +1. After finishing everything, Deculian dragged his tired body out of the room. However, while he was still walking across the campus, a cheerful voice called from ahead, "Oh, Professor Deculian. Huh, long time no see." Hearing the call, Deculian immediately looked toward the speaker. Then the protagonist's expression tensed and sweat began to run. It's Zeit. What is he doing here? A few pieces of information about the burly man flashed through Deculian's mind. Zeit von Bruggen Frieden, currently the head of the Frieden family, and also Yulia's older brother. He was also the one who pushed for the engagement between Deculian and Yulia. But more importantly, his early game combat power even surpasses Ganesha. In terms of strength, he ranks third at this stage, a figure notorious for terrifying combat ability. But why would someone like him seek me out? Could it be because of Yulia's snowstone? Thinking this, the biological alarm in Deculian's head kept ringing. He swallowed hard, unsure what to do. Could this situation be a deadly variable? I have no strategy to deal with this monster. Ahead, Zeit didn't know the protagonist was so worried he was about to piss his pants, so he cheerfully called out, "Great to see you. I've heard you and Yulia haven't been getting along lately, so I've been worried. So I decided to arrange a dinner this week. Are you free?" After hearing Zeit's upbeat tone, Deculian breathed a small sigh of relief. Thank goodness. For now, he still seems friendly. He was about to say something, but before he could open his mouth, Zeit's large hand slapped his shoulder. Ah. Decisive. I like that. I've prepared the dishes you like, so come. I arranged it, so I'll take care of everything. Then see you later, Professor Deculian. Zeit's tone sounded more like an order than an invitation. Watching his large back leave, Deculian felt a bit uneasy. He hadn't been given a chance to refuse. No. Rather, Zeit made it impossible to refuse. Zeit always puts his family above all. Who knows what would happen if I broke his plans? It seems I can't cancel this appointment. Time quickly passed to the next day. Scene shifts to the Frieden family. At this time, Yulia had been informed about the meeting with Deculian. Naturally, she would not agree easily. I don't want to meet him. Besides, I'm busy training the cavalry, so I don't have time to meet. In response to his sister's objection, Zeit's face showed some vexation. You're angry because someone stole a snowstone from you, right? Hearing that, Yulia immediately retorted, pouting. Listen, no way. Zeit continued, why would he want a metal that's only useful for forging weapons? If not for you then. Before the burly brother could finish, Yulia shouted, if he plans to give me a sword, I'll break off the engagement immediately. She said it with a face full of anger. However, Zeit opposite her was equally irritated. Thick blue veins like worms began to bulge on his neck and face. The burly man even began to radiate a terrifying pressure and growled, Yulia, think carefully. The other day I told you that doing that was very foolish. I'm certain I warned you. In politics, there is no room for personal feelings, and as far as I know, there's no man who loves you. Or do you have someone who likes you? Opposite him, Yulia ground her teeth and replied, no. Seeing her somewhat resigned face, Zeit's tone softened a little as he asked, are you that concerned about Deculian's past? Yulia answered immediately, it's none of my business. Then why? Zeit asked further. For that question, she stood silent and did not answer. Seeing that, the head of the Fryden family had no intention of pressing further. Instead, he turned and left but not before admonishing, be on time. If there's a problem, handle it. Behind him, Yulia remained standing silently. A mix of anger and helplessness began to swell inside her, making her hand clench tight. Then, as if to vent that anger, she frantically threw herself into sword training. The sound of wind-splitting strikes rang out continuously, and the ground around her suffered from her techniques. At that moment, a man in black approached from behind and warned, your sword path is chaotic, my lady. This black-haired man was Varen, Yulia's subordinate. Seeing him appear, Yulia calmed down somewhat and replied, Varen, I'm sorry. You've seen my ugly side. Varen answered with a composed face, it's nothing, my lady. I still can't believe that scoundrel suits you so much that the family had forced you to marry him. Turning to Yulia's perspective, not allowing his subordinate to speak further, she immediately cut him off, enough. As a knight, it's unbecoming to speak ill of others behind their backs. Don't dirty your hands for me, I'm fine, Yulia said with emotion, then quickly spun and left. I'm going home. Prepare yourself. Yes, my lady. Varen replied from behind. Watching the small figure walking away step by step, the subordinate seemed to reach a decision. He thought, my lady. I have finally found the answer to this suffering. I have found a way to prove my loyalty. As her subordinate, this is something only I can do. I will make you happy, my lady. Thinking that, he unconsciously grabbed the sword at his hip. His voice carried a hint of killing intent. In another development, because a demon had appeared on Black Mountain, Elder Burke of the council was convening a meeting. Inside the room, an elderly man spoke, they say a demon has appeared on Black Mountain. At first, mages had to use secret arts to suppress its malice, but with the demon's reappearance, we must act immediately. Send letters to the 12 great families, tell them to gather. According to Burke's wishes, time quickly passed to the next day. At this time, Deculian was checking the items he had won at auction. Finally, he finished sorting the items he'd won. I can use Rupurin's ring, it will help me recover mana faster. This amulet can also store mana. I'll put the remaining items in the cellar as Ganesha suggested, no need to worry about anyone stealing them. However, there was still a problem. The most important item couldn't be used right now. Deculian's gaze turned to the precious snowstone he had arduously won at auction. It was currently locked away in a cabinet. I know I can't use this snowstone immediately, but it still remains unmoved, no matter how much spirit power I use. Is it resisting my mana? In the game it's very expensive, I could only admire it, so I don't know how to use it. If I melt it down, could I control it with spirit power? Thinking that, Deculian suddenly had an idea. I can look up its properties in the library. A sword can be tamed through communication, so I have to communicate with and understand this stone. If that's the case, then don't hesitate another moment. He reached out and lightly touched the slab before him. Immediately, the snowstone erupted with a fierce light. Not long after, Deculian reluctantly withdrew his hand. A message appeared on the screen, Insight plus 0.1%, mana, 1, 357/3, 357 plus 300. Seeing how much mana he had spent to tame the stone, Deculian could only shake his head in dismay. 2,000 mana just to increase 0.1%. It'll take me a year to tame this. Could I do better? Well, I should get out for a bit. Thinking that, Killian glanced at the calendar beside him and whispered, tonight I have a dinner with Zeit. And there's also some event. Before I occupied this body, the plan was made 3 days before the day I died. Time quickly passed until late afternoon. Scene shifts to the Von Meschel restaurant. This is where that burly Zeit held the meeting. Killian was already there. As soon as he appeared, the Fryden head cheerfully said, thanks for coming. Yulia went ahead, she's waiting inside. Saying that, the two quickly stepped into the room, followed by murmurs of admiration from the guests. You look beautiful dressed like that, Yulia. From everyone's gaze, inside the room Yulia wore an extremely alluring outfit, completely different from the armor she normally wore. Her radiant appearance even caused the cold young man Killian to change expression slightly. He thought, she usually only wears armor. I didn't expect she'd look so beautiful dressed up. No wonder Killian likes her. Beside her, Yulia complained in response, of course. Do you know how much effort I put in? Not paying much attention to that remark, after Zeit sat down he turned to speak with another person at the party. You came too? The woman replied that she came along to look after Yulia. Back to Killian's perspective, the appearance of the unfamiliar woman at the party made him a bit uneasy. I didn't know she'd come. I was too focused on Yulia. But I don't want to meet her here. Josephine. Even if she came as my fiancé's sister, it can't be that simple. She is the person I must be wary of above all others. She is someone who would do anything to achieve her goals. She's like a madwoman. Josephine is the head of Black Shadow, a covert intelligence organization. She is also very powerful, comparable to Zeit. The only person she respects is Yulia. So if anyone harms Yulia, she will be furious. I don't know why Josephine hasn't dealt with Killian yet, but she's bound to do it. When I first stepped into this room, she radiated a huge murderous intent toward me. Perhaps it's the fate of the antagonist. I can clearly feel her killing intent. This variable will be very dangerous. In the end, I must show reverence to Yulia to survive this death. Killian quietly reminded himself. Beside him, the burly Zeit, unaware his future brother-in-law was nervous, enthusiastically said, let's get straight to the point, Professor Killian. When do you want to hold the celebration? It's been 3 years since you two got engaged, hasn't it? Not giving Killian a chance to answer, Yulia, sitting to one side, fumbled as if to speak. However, Zeit didn't let her voice her thoughts and put up a hand to stop her. This is adult business. Hearing that, Yulia's gaze fell in sadness. Her lips pressed together tightly, speechless. Back to Killian, before voicing his thoughts. He cast a glance to observe the dangerous figure, Josephine, for a moment. From the protagonist's view, Josephine tilted her head slightly as if unconcerned. Yet her eyes, seemingly casual, were fixed on Killian, making the hairs on his arms stand on end. To keep his own life safe, Killian began to prepare the lines he'd rehearsed. I'll let Yulia handle this. If she doesn't trust this marriage, I'm willing to give it up. Killian's seemingly caring words made Yulia so angry she ground her teeth, while the burly family head Zeit gently chided, good heavens. Marriage is a serious matter, how can you take it lightly? Haven't you two been apart too long? If so, just rekindle the feelings. Marriage isn't something you can just drop. The elders of the family won't accept that either. Hearing this, Yulia could no longer hold back. She shouted, family head. Please allow us to speak privately, please. From Yulia's tone, Zeit immediately guessed his sister was somewhat unset. After about 2 seconds thought, he nodded in agreement. All right, let's go, Josephine. So the two of them stood and left the room. Before walking out, Josephine even waved cheerfully, have a nice chat. Once the room door was closed, Yulia's cold voice rang out, what are you planning to do this time? What do you want, after all? She asked, looking at Killian with eyes full of hatred. At the same time, outside, Josephine stood silently in the corridor, secretly eavesdropping on the young couple's conversation inside the room. Back to Killian, he didn't dare to risk answering the question immediately and instead glanced toward the door, worry clearly visible in his eyes. She's eavesdropping behind that door. Josephine is listening. She acted as if she had left, but it was certainly only to hide her listening device. There's no way she actually left. However, this was also an opportunity. Josephine didn't know that she had been discovered. Killian truly loved Yulia. If he could make her believe that, he could avoid the deadly variable. With that thought, he switched on his superb acting skills to fool his little wife. He put on an emotional face and said, "Yulia, I'll tell you the truth. As you can see, I cannot cancel the betrothal as I wish. No, more precisely, there's nothing we can do. Things have gone too far." Hearing that, Yulia across from him clenched her hands and demanded, "So this time, what dirty method will you use to torment me? Before we were betrothed, you used your connections to force this marriage. You promised to compensate the elder of my family. Do you remember what you said to convince me? You said, fighting is too dangerous. Because of that line, you forced me to give up pursuing the Empire's cause, then suggested I take over as captain of Haid Kane, the unit managed by the Yukline family. And when I refused, you spread all kinds of rumors about me. What are you trying to do?" As she spoke, tears welled in Yulia's eyes. She stared at Killian, waiting for an answer. But looking at her face now, Killian was also silenced. He told himself, "I know all of this." He had mistaken obsessive insistence on keeping her by his side for love, and he sabotaged everything around Yulia so she had no choice but to stay. Killian had committed unforgivable acts. Therefore, I understand Yulia's resentment better than anyone. Thinking this, Killian could only say, "I will not do that anymore." "I don't believe you," Yulia shouted. Yet the protagonist's next words truly surprised her. "I know I pushed you too hard. I realize what I did was wrong, but I didn't do it alone. Your sister and brother also went too far. If it weren't for that, they would have no reason to oppose canceling the betrothal. Simply for family honor. Besides, shouldn't you leave your family behind to pursue your dream of becoming a guard? A guard is a knight not affiliated with any family, sworn to protect only the emperor." "Yulia, I am neither honest nor loyal. I am completely the opposite of your ideal. I am not suitable for you. The only thing I can do for you is to maintain our betrothal, but not to marry you. I truly want you to be free. But given this tangled web of interests, I cannot. You can use my name to protect yourself as long as you need, until you can pursue your dream. I will wait. And I will keep our betrothal." Across from him, Yulia's face had lost all anger. Instead she sounded skeptical. "What are you planning? Why are you saying all this now?" In response, Killian kept his tone, "I'm not expecting anything by saying all this. However, if I could ask for one thing, I want to see your smile once a month." "That's what I wish for," he said with a sorrowful look. When Yulia heard this, her face blushed like a ripe fruit. Her voice became stammering and inarticulate. "What? Why would you suddenly want something like that?" Not only her, even Josephine, eavesdropping outside, was startled and blushed, leaving Zeit beside her a bit puzzled. Back to Killian, he had been lost in thought. To avoid the deadly variable. I said what she wanted to hear. However, seeing how flustered Yulia was after his words, she looked truly adorable. I must admit. Even the love Killian felt for Yulia is mine now. Opposite him, Yulia's face grew redder. She said, shamefully, "Are you trying to trick me with such embarrassing words? Anyway, I don't believe you. I'll never trust your plan." Seeing her reaction, Killian couldn't help but laugh out loud. But that made Yulia even more embarrassed. "Why are you laughing? I told you I wouldn't believe it." Outside, at Killian's acting, even Josephine was completely convinced and felt reassured. Although slightly embarrassed, are his feelings real? If so, should I watch a little longer? In short, Killian avoided another deadly variable and earned 2 more shop coins. Time passed quickly. 3 days later, he was in his fancy car, heading somewhere. Inside the car, Killian glanced at the surroundings and thought, 3 days went by so fast. The Memorial Day has arrived. The protagonist's destination this time was a cemetery. After instructing the driver to wait outside, Killian entered the cemetery alone. As he walked, Killian's mood was full of emotion. Only the sound of footsteps in a graveyard can stir a person's feelings, simply because of the atmosphere. Sunlight threaded through the blades of grass and the cracks on the tombstones. My heart dissolved into this place before my body had a chance to. This is where my memories are kept, not Dekillian's, but Kim Woojin's. Thinking that, Dekillian looked toward a particular gravestone. Images of his ex-girlfriend, Ura, began to surface in his mind. Her beautiful smile was still imprinted in Dekillian's memory. To clarify this, let's go back to a time in the past. It happened late one night. While Dekillian was taking a short break, his girlfriend suddenly suggested, "I'm going to hide an Easter egg inside." I was thinking it would be great if we added something to Dekillian's profile. He's the game's main boss, so I thought that would be enough. I also have the author's permission, she said excitedly. But faced with that attitude, Dekillian was only slightly annoyed. He tossed his empty coffee cup into the trash and shook his head in complaint, "That will only add to our workload. We've been working all night. It doesn't directly affect revenue, so don't try to increase our workload, team leader." Hearing that, Ra crossed her arms and protested, "Why not? This is important too. We have to put our hearts into the game." In response came the protagonist's sigh, "You're babbling again. Fine, do whatever you want. You didn't bring this up to ask my opinion anyway." From Ra's perspective, she looked at her boyfriend and said with delight, "I think it's a pretty good idea. It won't be useless. Dekillian also has a deceased fiancé, after all." At that time, Ra always spoke cheerfully about the interesting ideas she came up with. I couldn't understand what she found amusing about those stories. I didn't know what her joke meant. After she placed an Easter egg in, what made her smile so happily? To recall Kim Woojin's memories, I must find those clues. Did I call the idea great or did I ruthlessly dismiss her? Thinking that, Dekillian studied the gravestone before him. Inscribed on it were the words, "Ura von Fergis Mahinicht. Always grateful to you." Reading that inscription, Dekillian seemed stunned. He stood there, dazed, thinking, why did she carve my name on this gravestone? Dekillian was created based on Kim Woojin. Why did Ra use her own name for the deceased fiancé of Dekillian? And why did she thank me? Thinking that, Dekillian reached out and lightly touched the cold gravestone. A wave of emotion began to flood Dekillian's body, causing him to be unable to hold back his tears. A single word could fill his entire being with feeling. It was as if he could hear Ra's whispers. Memories of earlier days returned in succession. The way she gushed praise for his drawings. The way she put a coat on him whenever he shivered from the cold. The way she held his hand and told him she loved him. The way she always helped him up when he was tired. 7 years together, always by my side. Memories of her. The more he thought, the more Dekillian's tears flowed. However, there was one thing he did not know. Not far away, a strange man was watching him, grinding his teeth. He whispered, "I've found you, filthy mage." Time passed quickly. By now, Dekillian's tear-streaked face had gone, replaced by his usual cold expression. Done with what he came to do, he wanted to leave the cemetery. As he walked, he thought, now I'm calm like this, as if I never cried just now. Dekillian's personality is truly puzzling at times like this. With that in mind, the strange man stepped forward and blocked Dekillian's path. Looking at his silhouette, the protagonist murmured, "A familiar face. Lockhart, isn't it?" From Dekillian's view, the long-haired stranger held a sharp dagger. A murderous aura radiated from him, enough to make an ordinary person shudder in fear. He was Lockhart, the mage killer who had been wanted and publicized earlier. Seeing Dekillian recognize him, Lockhart grew furious, like a mad dog about to bite. "You know of me? Unbelievable. How dare an arrogant, trivial mage like you say that?" Not answering the taunt, Dekillian quickly reviewed what he knew about Lockhart. The mage killer Lockhart, this guy was a lieutenant villain who targeted only mages. What made him a natural enemy of mages was his ability to nullify magic. As in other games, nullification is often seen as cheating. Moreover, Lockhart's ability had no limits and wasn't even affected by physical force. Thinking that, as Lockhart lunged to get close to Dekillian to taste some blood, he quickly used his telekinesis, sending fragments of stone flying forward like bullets. However, when the stones were only a few centimeters from Lockhart, they suddenly stopped, as if blocked by an invisible barrier. This made Dekillian narrow his eyes. Although he had known beforehand, it still bothered him. Magic couldn't be used within his range. He muttered, while on the other side Lockhart opened his mouth in a loud laugh. Stupid mage. Magic doesn't work on me. After saying that, he swung the dagger toward Deculion. Deculion nimbly jumped back to dodge. Next, Lockhart kept charging. His arm swung like a machine, attacking frantically. But with his observational skills, Deculion easily read his attack angles and gently evaded without difficulty. Most mages would tremble before Lockhart because of his special ability. However, Deculion was different. At that moment, Lockhart leapt into the air, aiming the dagger at Deculion, and shouted, "Die!" In response to his words, came a powerful punch from Deculion striking his face. The force of the blow immediately sent Lockhart's nose bleeding profusely. After all, Deculion's daily physical training was not for nothing. Lockhart's body was flung away like a torn sack. Seeing his pathetic state, Deculion said coldly, "It's meaningless to me." Lockhart roared in anger, "You bastard," but before he could utter more, he took a full-force kick to the face from Deculion. A few days earlier, I had managed to get 10 shop coins and buy mana quality enhancement. This helps improve my mana control efficiency. After enhancing mana quality, Deculion tried using telekinesis to manipulate a chair. Immediately, the chair shot up onto the roof and got stuck there. It seems I need to recalibrate this entirely. I only wanted to lift it a little. But now I realize I can unleash more mana than before. It seems this ability applies over a wider range than I thought. Now let's just carry on with daily life as usual. Saying that, Deculion quickly took off his shirt and tossed it aside, then began his usual pull-up exercise. However, the moment he grabbed the bar, Deculion suddenly noticed something strange. He hurriedly withdrew his hand and saw deep, distinct indentations where he'd gripped. This surprised Deculion. "What is this? I thought it would be only a mild enhancement. But in reality, it significantly increased my bodily strength quality." Back in the present, Lockhart had been kicked flat on the ground like a dead dog by Deculion. At the same time, the system announced, "Villain's fate, surpassed uncertain death. Shop coins +2, not paying much attention to the notification. Deculion simply stared at Lockhart, the man he had been beating like a dog, and thought, I know that mana quality enhancement also applies as an attribute. I could beat Lockhart with the Iron Man attribute, but since that characteristic has become stronger, everything is easier than I expected. In front of him, Lockhart's body began to tremble uncontrollably as he tried to get up. He kept cursing under his breath, damn it. I could have wiped out those damn mages. Traitorous mages. The ones who betrayed God, Visum. The Brecks. The shameless brats. You're all madmen. You're just a useless insect without magic. Deculion, with his noble dignity, did not get angry at Lockhart's meaningless curses. He began to consider this man's power, a skill so strong it could be considered cheating. A rage directed squarely at mages, and within that expression, was betrayal. Deculion suddenly thought of something and asked, Lockhart, are you of the Scarlet Clan? This unexpected question left Lockhart looking stunned. He stared at Deculion, then hesitantly asked, You, how did you know? The Scarlet Clan is named so because they are all born within a curtain of blood. Their bloodline descends from demons of ancient times. They conceal their identities and live scattered across the continent, the race opposed to mages. Just as magic was created to fight demons, the conflict between mages and the Scarlet Clan is a core element in shaping the worldview, and is also one of the main storylines of the game. However, the Scarlet Clan constantly faces mortal danger, simply because of their ancestors. A purge is very likely happening somewhere right now. Thinking of that, Deculion's face showed some sympathy. He said, Lockhart, I understand you very well. The oppression you've endured for so long has truly been harsh. But if you kill an innocent mage, you'll become a monster like them. In response to this, Lockhart's face twisted with extreme rage. He shouted, as if he couldn't accept that such words could come from a mage, Shut up. What do you know? Stop preaching and just kill me. But Deculion calmly explained, I know that, because the Scarlet Clan is innocent too. This statement left Lockhart momentarily stunned. But quickly he countered, What? You little mage, what did you just say? Deculion remained calm and replied, I am Deculion of the Ucline family. It is a family of high nobility, one that has never lost its dignity. Hearing Deculion introduce himself, Lockhart truly could not understand. He shouted, "Are you going to preach to me before you kill me?" But Deculion continued, "The only time I lost my dignity was when facing a demon. The Eucline line has hunted demons since ancient times. We start to go mad as if we're just waiting to see a demon. It's an instinct I cannot overcome. But did I lose my dignity and composure when standing before you? Did I waver when you provoked me? Did I go mad as if I'd been waiting for it for a long time? You are human. You can trust me." Ahead, Lockhart's face truly became dazed. An unusual thought suddenly arose in his mind. Perhaps this is the dignity of a true noble. At that moment, a shout came from the distance, "Over here. Hurry up." Hearing the call, Deculion quickly delivered a kick to Lockhart's chin, causing him to spit blood and faint on the spot. "So, stay there and surrender," he murmured, though Lockhart could no longer hear him. Shortly after, one of two people who had run up stood at attention and introduced himself. "I am Inspector Rabar." "That was quite a kick. You must be Professor Deculion. As for this murderer, should I give him a few more kicks?" he said, turning to glare angrily at Lockhart. Fortunately, Deculion stepped in to stop him. "It's fine, leave him be." With that said, he began to use his telekinesis. A pile of sand not far away slowly changed, gradually forming a sturdy rope. Seeing this, Inspector Rabar was stunned. "I didn't expect magic to be this wondrous." Deculion handed him the rope he had made and instructed, "This one can nullify magic, so spells won't work on him. Instead, tie him with this rope." "So miraculous. No wonder he's so good at fleeing, and why the magic radar didn't work," Rabar said in amazement. Then Deculion asked, "Why did you arrive early? Weren't you on patrol?" Inspector Rabar shook his head slightly and explained, "We came after receiving a report." "Didn't you report it, Professor?" "Not me. Someone must have heard the commotion and called it in." "Then I'll go ahead. You get to work." "Understood," Rabar replied quickly. Back to Deculion, the encounter with Lockhart here was a minor matter for him. Luckily he could resolve it without bloodshed. There are still traces of that person here. I don't want to hurt anyone, Deculion thought to himself. Time passed quickly. Scene change, the next day, at the Eucline Manor, Deculion's training room. At that time, his sister Uriel was also present to deliver a summons from the Birched Council. She said, "It's the first meeting in 15 years at Birched." Hearing that, Deculion paused his training. He took the letter and casually asked, "You came all the way here just to give me this scroll?" Uriel replied with a bored expression, "Because you don't care, so I had to come in person. Isn't it the head of the family's role to look after this household? And when will you put some clothes on?" Meanwhile, Deculion quickly opened the scroll and grasped the letter's contents. It read, "Recently, demons have appeared on Black Mountain. Therefore, the Birched Council wishes to assemble the families to discuss this matter." At the same time, the system issued a main quest for him, Main Quest, Birched Summons. After reading it, Deculion said to Uriel, "It will take place in a week. I can bring someone with me, like a guard." Hearing this, Uriel was a bit surprised, then probed, "You need a guard? Then I'll ask Jeff. He used to be with the mercenary company." Deculion shook his head, "No need for that. Someone like Jeff is even less necessary. He's more used to holding a helm than a weapon." Opposite him, Uriel let out a soft snort. But then her expression grew worried as she warned, "You can't go without a guard. I've been there, the journey to Birched can be life-threatening. I've been there, the journey to Birched can be life-threatening." Her words made Deculion pause slightly. He asked, "You're worried about me? Dream on. Don't say such disgusting things. I just can't let you die before I officially take the headship from you," Uriel shouted. Before she awkwardly cleared her throat and added, "Leave the guard matter to me. I'll hire someone trustworthy." Scene change. Fryden military camp. At this time, Yulia was training a group of soldiers. "Good. That's the attitude. Keep your focus." Not far away, the deputy commander looked ahead with a face full of anxiety. "What should I do?" In response, someone behind spoke up, "What do you mean?" The sudden voice startled the deputy commander, who shouted, "At least walk so you make some noise, Varen. We just landed a big contract, but there's something that worries me. I'm not sure we should accept." Varen raised an eyebrow. "Don't speculate. Tell me your concern, deputy." Hearing that, the man could only bitterly speak his worry. "This matter is awkward to bring up with her. The mission is to protect Dekillian. More precisely, to protect the entire convoy. But plainly, they know if they asked us to guard the whole convoy we wouldn't agree. That's why they downplayed it," the deputy said calmly. What he didn't know was that when Varen heard the name Dekillian, his hand trembled with excitement. However, Varen quickly hid his earlier manner and advised, "Take that mission. Guarding an entire convoy isn't something just anyone can do. If we succeed, our army's reputation will rise immediately. Money worries will ease too. After all, we are a private army." The deputy still hesitated, but the commander. "About Dekillian." However, Varen cut in coldly, "It's fine, our commander isn't the kind to let personal feelings interfere with a mission." Hearing this, the deputy nodded in agreement. "That's true. I'll report back to the commander then." With that said, the man quickly departed. Behind him, Varen stood there with a cold expression.